In the desolate sky of a devastated world, a giant red-eyed raven flies over the ruins, symbolizing imminent danger. On the ground, people suffer from hunger, discrimination, and the unbridled slaughter perpetrated by heavily armed soldiers. In the middle of the chaos of war, a young soldier tries to shoot, but his gun misfires as it completely runs out of ammo. Then, a barrage of rifle fire tears through the air with a roar, sealing the fate of the cornered combatant. He ends up being hit by multiple shots in the back, without any chance of escaping that brutal attack. With the fall of his country, the young man's life fades away amidst blood and the total darkness that consumes his consciousness. On the verge of death, he opens his eyes one last time and catches sight of a mysterious, intense light shining in front of him. A glowing hand made of pure golden energy emerges from the midst of that light. Reaching out toward him, the young man accepts the call and firmly grasps the divine hand that formed before him amidst the golden flames. Pulled by the mysterious force, he is reborn, floating amidst the glow, completing his spiritual resurrection. Upon waking up, he finds himself in the courtyard of a modern academy, realizing he is in a totally new world. Sitting in the classroom, the young man reflects on the 3 long years he has already spent living in this new reality. He stares at his own hands, determined to take advantage of this second chance to change his destiny once and for all. In the classroom, the teacher announces that the day of the long-awaited student awakening ceremony has finally arrived. Commanding the class, the instructor orders everyone to gather on the sports field for the moment that will define their lives. In this world, portals began to open and colossal monsters emerged to threaten humanity's existence. To combat the threat, humans awakened powers and were divided into classes ranging from rank C to rank S. In the new society that formed, a hunter's class became the only thing that truly matters. Suddenly, Luna Veramont, heir to an influential family, awakens the rank S class, Purification Saint. The students whisper, impressed by Luna's score of 95 on the evaluation, something almost impossible to achieve. In the middle of the crowd, a female student shouts excitedly that it is now Pluto's turn, leaving a classmate confused about who he is. The announcer calls out Pluto's name, summoning him to step up to the stage under the watchful eyes of everyone present. With a record of 200 talent points, the young man walks with an imposing presence that catches the school's attention. On his way to the testing altar, he crosses paths directly with Luna Veramont, who looks at him seriously. With a confident smile, Luna tells him not to disappoint her, expecting a great result from the prodigy boy. Pluto walks straight past without saying a single word, making the young woman notice that he remains as silent and indifferent as ever. The crowd goes wild and starts shouting Pluto's name as he approaches the center of the courtyard. In front of the glowing blue sphere, he receives instructions to place his hand right above the awakening orb. The academy instructor watches intrigued, knowing that Pluto is the only one in the entire world to possess 200 talent points. If the young man manages to awaken a rank S class, he will have a guaranteed spot in the prestigious Blue Dragon Guild. The Blue Dragon Guild is widely known as the #1 among the country's major organizations. Managing to get into this guild guarantees wealth, high status, and the bright future that every professional covets. Most importantly, the Blue Dragon was created by the government itself, functioning basically as the military force. In his previous life, Pluto was just an ordinary soldier from a weak country, who ended up dying when the superpowers invaded. Now, he reaches out his hand, determined to use this power to grow stronger and make his new nation the greatest of all. Upon touching the sphere, a colossal explosion of purple and blue energy occurs, making the audience believe it is a rank S. However, the young man himself is in shock upon realizing that something strange is happening with his energy. Luna's and the instructor's expressions change drastically as they witness the unexpected result of the test. A gigantic shadowy skeleton aura appears behind Pluto when the system screen reveals the Necromancer class. An absolute silence takes over the place, while the young man remains enveloped by the purplish flames of his new class. The students comment disappointedly that, despite the intimidating look, Necromancer is considered the worst rank C class. Pluto is devastated, unable to understand where he went wrong to end up with such a weak and devalued class. The official status screen confirms the name Pluto, level 0, and all his initial attributes balanced at 10. Disappointed, the academy instructor crosses his arms in laments, having had so many expectations for the young man. To make matters worse, Pluto's ability allows him to summon only one soldier every half hour, leaving him frustrated. Suddenly, a golden system message pops up informing him that the limit of necromancy summons has been removed. He realizes that, without the time restriction, his 10 initial mana points now allow him to summon 10 soldiers at once. As he levels up, his summons will grow even stronger, being able to create colossal warriors and skeletal dragons. He pictures a relentless army of undead knights, marching under his direct command. With enough mana and no limit restrictions, Pluto realizes he will become a one-man army. Pluto realizes this change is enough to surpass any rank S and decides he will dominate the interview taking place in a month. A man in a suit interrupts Pluto's thoughts, shouting that the ceremony is over and ordering him to move already. Pluto finds it ridiculous how their attitude changed so fast upon discovering he awakened only a rank C class. Confident in his current strength, he smiles and thinks dungeons will be a breeze, deciding it is time to focus on leveling up. The other students whisper, confused about Pluto's smile, commenting that the shock of turning rank C must have driven him crazy. A green-haired guy shows up provoking Pluto, ironically calling him the elite class's golden boy, and Mr. 200. He mocks Pluto's rank C and offers to take him as a pet, since he awakened rank A, while his female classmate calls him a holding back trash. Pluto recognizes the provocateur as Adrian Blackwood, thinking that guy always had some unprovoked grudge against him. Adrian continues to mock with his arms crossed, laughing with his girlfriend as he imagines the genius. Pluto acting like an obedient puppy. Adrian tells him to accept being his dog, but Pluto walks straight past without saying anything, thinking it is not worth wasting breath on trash. A female voice chimes in, commenting that she is impressed by Pluto ignoring that Trash's insults without saying a single word. Looking back, Pluto is met with the beautiful girl with long silver hair and immediately identifies her as Luna. With no patience for nonsense, Pluto warns her that he is not in the mood for jokes right now, but Luna maintains her serious expression. Luna surprises Pluto by suggesting that she herself accompany him to hunt monsters and help him level up in the dungeons. He questions if having a rank S like her helping him wouldn't be a hindrance, but Luna strongly denies it and says there is no problem at all. She argues that since his goal is to enter the Blue Dragon Guild, his chances will skyrocket if she helps him evolve. Luna steps closer excitedly and states she is certain that with 200 talent points, he is much more than an ordinary necromancer. Observing her enthusiasm, Pluto thinks to himself that this sharp insight is typical of the usual Luna. Pluto sincerely thanks her for the offer to lower herself to help him, but pauses before giving his final answer, gently pulling her hand away from his arm. Pluto directly reveals that he will have to decline Luna's generous help. Pluto explains that he will enter the Blue Dragon on his own terms, and that without a high class, he only has one path left to follow. With his eyes shining, he decides to focus entirely on leveling up to crush the other rookies and surpass ranks A and S. Upon arriving at the Aurora Academy dungeon lobby, Pluto remembers that the fastest method to evolve is the sequence trials. Some students standing nearby watch closely as Pluto walks purposefully toward the testing portal. The panel explains that in the sequence trials, monsters range from level 1 to 5 in solo mode, with no chance to retreat after starting. Despite being considered a suicide mission for low levels, the experience gained there is much greater than in ordinary dungeons. From the outside, the female teacher and the students catch sight of Pluto's silhouette entering the testing area and are surprised. The elite teacher panics, thinking the trauma of turning rank C made Pluto go crazy and walk to his own death. Luna tries to stay calm and control her thoughts, knowing well that Pluto is not the type of person to choose the easiest path. To ensure his safety, Luna decides to keep watch at the portal entrance and call for reinforcements immediately if she notices danger. The The scene shows an imposing floating island surrounded by clouds, with a glowing green energy dome shining at the top of the terrain. Pluto emerges inside this dome of light and realizes that this location serves as the trial's initial safe zone. Upon crossing the glowing barrier, Pluto knows there will be no chance to retreat once combat is initiated. A pack of level 1 Void Hounds runs aggressively toward him, forming an intimidating pack. Seeing 10 level 1 monsters right on the first floor, Pluto activates his purple magic and understands why rookies avoid this place. He summons 2 skeletal Necromancer soldiers and prepares to test the strength of his new summons against the beasts. Pluto orders his skeletal soldiers to focus all their attacks on the hounds, leading the charge on the front line. With violent strikes from their swords, Pluto's summons hit the monsters dead on, crushing them with ease. After defeating the beasts and gaining 10 experience points, he smiles upon seeing that the monsters are easy to deal with using his soldiers. As more hounds rush toward him, Pluto recalls what it used to be like being the center of attention in the past. He channels his dark energy into his hand, remembering that he became the target of jokes and mockery from everyone after the test result. The memory of the man shouting at him to snap out of his trance after the awakening ceremony ends echoes in his mind again. Focused on the current combat, Pluto summons more undead to tear the aggressive beasts apart, spending more of his mana. He also recalls Adrian's mockery offering arrogant help in exchange for turning him into his pet. An even darker memory of an armored warrior appears, humiliating his people by calling them an inferior race. Remembering when he was young and weak, surrounded by arrogant enemies, he summons even more soldiers with his remaining mana. Determined never to relive that humiliation, Pluto swears that, even being rank C, he will become the strongest warrior of all. With his magical energy completely depleted, he raises an imposing army of 10 skeletal soldiers around him. Satisfied with the result of his summons, he concludes that these 10 infantry soldiers are enough to clear the first floor. He plans to assign 2 soldiers to each Void Hound, achieving the maximum possible efficiency to dominate the battlefield. The skeleton soldiers, with red glowing eyes and surrounded by blue flames, advance wielding their swords for combat. With a quick sword slash, the skeletons take down a Void Hound, securing another 20 experience points for the summoner. Seeing that each kill yields 20 experience points, he calculates that he will be able to reach level 2 very easily in under 10 minutes. He notes that his mana regenerates by 1 point per minute, concluding that 10 minutes will be enough to restore his bar completely. As his new servants emerge from the ground with piercing screams, he boasts that he will soon have an entire army of skeletons at his disposal. Without wasting time, the young man points forward and orders his lackeys to charge with everything to continue the hunt. The skeletons act fast and take down more Void Hounds with precise strikes, continuously racking up more experience points. Enveloped by a strong aura of light, the young man celebrates his level up, surprised to have managed to progress much faster than expected. He gains attribute points and plans to use the mana recovery from leveling up to summon a large group of soldiers during the fight. He decides to invest all his available points into mana, aware that this attribute is essential to keep his summons active. Thanks to the mana increase, the Necromancer manages to expand his undead army and can now command up to 15 summoned skeletons. Determined and with a sharp gaze, he decides that it is already time to advance to face the challenges of the trial's second floor. Upon arriving on the second floor, his skeletons attack immediately and defeat a gray wolf, which yields 40 experience points. Seeing that the wolves have gone up to level 2, he decides to keep his guard up and a few lackeys close by, since he knows he is still very fragile. The young man levels up once more and celebrates the efficiency of hunting alone, deciding to put the new points into his mana again. The Necromancer reaches level 2 and raises his mana to 20, laughing as he realizes the perfect cycle of gaining power to obtain even more soldiers. As he advances through the mountainous scenery, he spots a group of level 4 mud horses and realizes the monsters are getting stronger. One of the wild horses, with glowing red eyes and snorting heavily, stares at the approaching threat in its territory. Without being intimidated, he points toward the animals, considering them just easy targets to gain experience, and orders his servants chance to attack. One of the skeleton soldiers leaps aggressively and lands a devastating blow on the mud horse's head, hitting it dead. The other undead surround and mercilessly pierce the animal with their weapons, securing another 40 experience points from the kill. Seeing one of his skeletons destroyed by the monster's counterattack, he realizes that the enemy's strength is now enough to defeat them. However, he is not worried at all, because he has mana to spare and quickly summons dozens of new soldiers, hitting the mark of 30. With an overwhelming army at his disposal, the remaining creatures are massacred quickly, filling the screen with kill messages. After defeating so many enemies, he reaches level 5 and celebrates upon seeing a notice that he is qualified to remove a new restriction. The system reveals that the evolution block has been removed, allowing his soldiers to absorb fallen enemies to evolve in form and power. A system illustration exemplifies how his servants can absorb any defeated opponent to transform into undead versions of them. He smiles maliciously upon realizing that the more enemies he eliminates, the more varied and powerful his undead horde will become. Surrounded by dense dark energy while holding a skull, he sees himself walking toward becoming the true king of the underworld. He remembers that necromancers gain new skills every 5 levels and checks out the new technique of creating explosive skeletons with area of effect damage. Eager to test his new human, bomb skeletons in the level 5 trial, he gets excited to finally possess an area of effect attack skill. Before him emerges a group of imposing level 5 black-backed beasts, robust creatures that appear to have formidable physical defenses. Noting that normal lackeys would take too long to pierce the beast's thick leather, he decides they are ideal gunny pigs for the explosives. With an energetic snap of his fingers, he alters the form of the summons and makes a burning flame appear on the heads of his skeleton soldiers. He watches the summons carrying huge barrels of gunpowder marked with red skulls, eager to see the effectiveness of the damage they will cause. The necromancer stares at the skeletons with an expression of surprise and slight awkwardness upon seeing the peculiar look they assumed for the attack. Covering his face in shame at his new servant's clumsy appearance, he decides to ignore the aesthetics, hoping only that the carnage is monstrous. The skeleton runs hastily through the brush, raising the explosive barrel with determination as it quickly approaches the target. The beast lows, confused, without understanding the danger, while the lackey throws the barrel with the fuse already lit right in front of the defenseless monster. A series of devastating detonations swallows the area in a gigantic curtain of fire and smoke, while he observes the results safely from afar. Impressed by the damage, he admits the damage is insane and collects 100 experience points for each of the beasts eliminated in the explosion. He realizes he will need a lot more mana to use this technique constantly, concluding that he urgently needs to get mage equipment. Although he gained good levels and skills, he laments the lack of loot, deducing that sequence trials only provide experience. Upon crossing the exit portal, he plans to buy items at the school shop without noticing the astonishment of a long-haired female employee who was watching him. The woman is horrified to see that Pluto came out of the trials unscathed and managed to reach level 5 in just 1 hour of activity. Knowing his hidden potential despite rank C, she decides to go immediately to report this unbelievable feat directly to the Academy director. Director Julian Kingsley, swamped in piles of work after the awakening ceremony, angrily questions what could be so urgent. Upon hearing about Pluto, Julian complains about being bothered by a rank C student when the Academy has talents from much higher tiers. The woman seriously asks what the real power of a level 0 necromancer capable of reaching level 5 in the trials in just 1 hour would be. In shock, the director says that is impossible, arguing that an initial necromancer would be torn to pieces by the void hounds in a few minutes. The woman is completely shocked, unable to understand how he was able to pull off such a feat. Pluto walks through the city thinking that professional equipment is way too expensive and decides he will have to explore dungeons to get them. He observes a group of injured hunters and hears others comment that the giant Rhinoceros Mountain dungeon is still way too dangerous. Pluto decides to challenge the level 5 dungeon of the giant Rhinoceros Mountain and selects the gold difficulty. difficulty to test his abilities. Impressed by the dungeon's visuals, he summons his Necromancer soldiers with blue flames to begin the exploration. He analyzes his level 5 attributes and mentally focuses on his only goal in there, which is to defeat the dungeon boss and get items. With his mana regeneration, the Necromancer realizes his army of skeleton soldiers can continue growing indefinitely. His warriors face level 5 rock rhinoceroses, and he realizes he can defeat them easily without suffering almost any losses. The soldiers defeat one of the giant rhinoceroses with ease, securing 50 experience points for the protagonist. Suddenly, a huge roar catches his attention with the intimidating growl of another creature appearing in the path. A gigantic rock rhinoceros charges furiously toward the skeleton soldiers who prepare for combat. Pluto quickly realizes that his soldiers' ordinary physical attacks are not working against the monster's high defense. Demonstrating total confidence, he states he has other tricks up his sleeve and prepares an explosive magic. The Necromancer converts one of his warriors into a gunpowder skeleton, ready to act as a living bomb against the enemy. The violent detonation blows up the giant rock rhinoceros, defeating it and yielding another 100 experience points to the hunter. Seeing the strategy's success, he decides to turn all his soldiers into walking explosives to sweep the dungeon. Successive devastating explosions eliminate several giant rock rhinoceroses, accumulating even more experience points for him. Upon leveling up to level 6, Pluto sees he has 5 unallocated attribute points and plans to reach level 7 by defeating the boss. In front of Pluto, a colossal shadow looms imposingly, revealing the arrival of the dreaded giant rock rhinoceros king. The gigantic dungeon boss roars with extreme fury, displaying its sharp horn and threatening glowing eyes. Pluto is surprised by the oversized size of the level 5 boss, but is not intimidated by the beast's presence. With a cold and determined look, the Necromancer warns the monster that it has already entered his elimination zone. Nearly 100 soldiers carrying gunpowder barrels completely surround the monster, ready to detonate all at once. A colossal explosion swallows the rock rhinoceros king, instantly eliminating it and yielding 5,000 experience points. Pluto celebrates his advance to level 7, impressed by having pulverized the powerful boss before it could even move. Suddenly, a beam of purple light cuts through the air and reveals a valuable item falling from the ceiling right after the boss falls. It is the epic quality giant rock staff, which adds 10 defense and 30 mana points to his attributes. The protagonist gets extremely excited upon realizing he hit the jackpot with the epic reward left by the monster. He remembers the equipment rarity classification by colors, where the epic level is extremely rare to obtain. Pluto can barely believe his absurd luck of getting a perfect epic item for casters right in his very first dungeon. Holding the staff, he reflects that rare level equipment already costs at least 100 gold coins in the hunter market. After equipping the staff and investing his new points into mana, Pluto reaches a total of 75 MP points and plans his next move. With this immense accumulated mana power, he is now capable of summoning 75 skeleton soldiers all at once. He returns to the main dungeon lobby and finds the place bustling with several other hunters and students. An arrogant green-haired young man approaches Pluto mockingly, saying his offer to help him still stands if he begs. Pluto just stares back at him in silence with a serious look, deeply bored by the boy's unprovoked provocation. The provocateur teases Pluto for being alone, presuming that no one wanted to ally with a rank C hunter considered trash by him. Adrian flaunts a rare, level spear and offers his scraps, equipment, and even woman if the protagonist agrees to be his lackey. Adrian's cronies laugh out loud and encourage Pluto to accept the humiliation to get help in the dungeons and not die alone. While the group cackles at the situation, the blonde girl beside him comments with contempt that no woman would touch a weirdo like Pluto. Maintaining his calm, Pluto warns that he will say it only once, catching the attention of the arrogant arrogant rival, who stares at him in confusion. Directly and imposingly, Pluto tells the guy and his whole group to fuck off, making it clear that he has no patience for them. Furious with the insolent reply, Adrian steps forward and grabs the protagonist by the tie, demanding that he repeat what he just said. The blonde female classmate holds Adrian's arm and calms him down, reminding him that fights are strictly prohibited in the lobby and can result in arrest. Noticing security guards approaching in the hallway, the group backs off and Adrian lets go of the protagonist's collar unwillingly. The guard in dark sunglasses steps forward, demanding loud explanations about the commotion that was about to start among the youths. Adrian plays it off quickly with a fake smile and lies to the guard, claiming they are old colleagues, just joking around with each other. The officer reprimands the group, ordering them to enter a dungeon or get out of there, but Adrian asks for a moment to give one last message. In a threatening tone, Adrian whispers that Pluto got lucky this time, but promises to finish him off as soon as he runs into him outside that hall. Adrian's group moves away toward the portal with the goal of reaching level 5 that very day, leaving Pluto behind. The young man thinks to himself that he would have finished off that guy right there if they hadn't interrupted the fight. The guard warns that trash like those are hopeless, and if they bother him again, he just needs to call him. Receiving a thank you, the guard shouts for the young man to wait, warning that dungeon is way too high level and that he should go to the rabbit meadow. Looking closer, the man in dark sunglasses is completely shocked and sweating cold upon noticing something impressive. Holding a giant stone staff, the young man selects the difficulty and prepares to make the most of the dungeon's 4 daily entries. The guard realizes that staff only drops from bosses on the gold difficulty and starts suspecting the boy's truly unbelievable potential. With the warning that 3 daily attempts remain, the guard is startled upon concluding that the boy cleared the Rhinoceros Mountain alone. Inside the dungeon alongside his skeleton warriors, the young man decides to pick up the pace to finish all his runs for the day. From the outside, the guard watches the portal glowing in red and confirms that the young man really chose the gold difficulty. The man sweats cold, thinking that soloing a gold dungeon at that level is a feat that not even S-class hunters could pull off. Faced with the deafening roar of a colossal monster, the skeleton soldiers charge forward, carrying lit gunpowder barrels toward it. With a confident and defiant smile on his face, the young man mocks the giant creature, trying to bare its fangs at him. The boss collapses amidst a huge explosion of fire, yielding 5,000 experience points, and leaving only 2 attempts remaining. In the following confrontation, another gigantic creature emerges, snorting heavily, while staring at the young man with its glowing blue eyes. Observing the beast's futile persistence, the young man smirks and comments that these monsters seem never to learn their lesson. Yet another violent explosion of fire consumes the scenery, detonating the giant monster without giving it any chance of defense. The Necromancer orders his servants to keep advancing with the barrels, while the skeletons make strange obedience noises. Another giant rhinoceros ends up defeated and stretched out on the ground after the explosive attacks, leaving only one more dungeon entry. Looking at his interface full of collected items, he realizes there is nothing useful for himself and decides to sell everything later. After exhausting his daily entries, the boy leaves the portal thinking about relaxing, remembering that his professional rookie test is tomorrow. The status screen shows the name Pluto at level 9, with 10 in strength and agility, plus 80, 5 in mana and 20 in defense with bonuses. The next day, a huge crowd of students gathers on the stairways and surrounding areas of the main courtyard of the prestigious Aurora Academy. The students chatter excitedly about the arrival of observers from a major guild, comparing their levels after a whole day of training. Hearing the others celebrating reaching only level 2 or 4, the protagonist finds it funny how slowly they level up. The red-armored rival approaches, taunting him, asking ironically how his progress as a necromancer is going. The show-off proudly recounts that he reached level 5 and mocks by asking if the protagonist has found any group willing to carry him yet. The speaker asks everyone for silence over the microphone and announces the start of the traditional post-awakening professional rookie test. He explains that the top 5 will be selected by the guild and the grand winner will receive a bonus epic quality equipment. The news about the valuable prize and recruitment opportunity leaves the surrounding students quite surprised and excited. In the honorary gallery appears Elder Aaron Crowley, a veteran whose huge amount of mana earned him the nickname Inexhaustible Fountain. The instructor details the rules, revealing that the Elder will summon creatures in the test rooms and each kill will guarantee points for half an hour, with a dark and imposing aura emanating around him. The Elder demonstrates an intimidating presence that impresses everyone present. The students panic, remembering they are below level 5, while the Elder has passed level 70 and his summons are strong. The Elder calms the audience by warning that he will limit the level of the summons to 1 and can interrupt the test of anyone who feels overwhelmed. Hearing about the control over the monsters, Level leaves the youths relieved and ready to give their all without running any life-threatening danger. The rival belittles the protagonist, claiming the test will be easy for him, but an impossible nightmare for someone of class C like him. The young man stares at the challenger with a piercing gaze and replies mockingly that there is no need to wait to settle their differences, accepting the immediate challenge with disdain. The rival proposes a direct bet on who will get the best ranking in today's exam. He bursts out laughing at the protagonist's audacity, finding the mere possibility of a necromancer trying to compete with his score ridiculous. Angrily, the rival questions if the boy still considers himself a genius and demands that he decide what the humiliating punishment for the loser will be. The arrogant guy demands that the loser walk on all fours and bark like a dog in front of the entire school, a punishment accepted immediately with great calm. The official announcement echoes through the stadium, declaring the immediate start of the Academy's first day of tests amidst the great audience's applause. The speaker orders all competitors to head to the individual exam rooms located inside the huge modern structure. An employee informs the Elder that all students are positioned and the teleportation matrices have been activated as requested. The guild's vice president activates his incredible magical summoning skills, making glowing circles appear at his feet on the stage. Inside the testing chambers, bluish energy runes begin to form on the floors in front of the students waiting for combat to start. The protagonist watches with total coldness, the glowing light appearing in front of him, preparing to deal with the test's first opponent. From the summoning circle emerge guards in glowing green armor, identified by the system as level 1 bronze soldiers. In response, the boy activates his own necromancy power and summons his undead servants to confront the Elder's creatures. Simultaneously, the armored statues wield their imposing spears and charge swiftly to initiate the first battle of the test. The skeletons furiously advance with their weapons, initiating the direct clash. A loud impact echoes as the skeletons collide against the bronze armors. Pluto notices that the soldiers fall easily, but admits it would be a problem if he still had the invocation limit. The Elder notices that someone defeated 5 warriors quickly and decides to increase the number of enemies. New bronze soldiers appear before Pluto, who immediately notices the new wave of opponents. He calculates that only 5 of his skeletons are enough to handle all the new enemies. Pluto watches the combat and realizes that keeping 1 skeleton against 2 bronze ones speeds up the control of the fight. The Elder is surprised to see that 10 bronze warriors were eliminated in the blink of an eye. The evaluators comment that the Academy has real talents, since someone managed to impress Crowley. The director orders them to open the leaderboard immediately to find out who is in the lead. The director is jaw-dropped upon reading that the first place is the young Pluto. The table displays Pluto in the isolated lead with 15 points, while ahead of the other competitors. One of the female evaluators points out, startled, that his score keeps rising every second. The scoreboard changes rapidly and surpasses the 20-point mark in favor of Pluto. The director does not understand how that is possible. While the female instructor asks him if he believes her now, he wonders if Pluto's 200 talent points allowed him to surpass the class limit. Crowley remembers that he only had 99 points when he led the city and sees the boy as a rare jewel. Decided to test the young man's limits, Crowley decides to use more power to truly challenge him. Pluto thinks 10 bronze soldiers are no threat and considers the test easier than the Rhinoceros Mountain. Suddenly, an immense wave of energy appears in the room, catching the young man's attention. He is faced with a colossal crowd of new enemies, appearing all at once around him. Upon seeing the absurd amount of opponents, Pluto gets tense with the density of the enemy army. The enemy horde advances in an overwhelming way, creating a completely insane scenario. With a confident smile, Pluto decides that if the challenge is a numbers game, he will give his best. He summons 30 skeleton warriors, wrapped in purple flames, to confront the horde. In Adrian's testing room, he delivers a powerful blow to cut down the bronze opponents. Adrian boasts about defeating over a dozen enemies and doubts Pluto can reach him. A flashback from 2 years ago shows the evaluation where Adrian obtained 77 talent points. Proud of the result that guaranteed rank A, he was acclaimed by colleagues who begged to be carried. The revelation that Pluto had achieved 200 talent points left Adrian completely in shock. While the students whispered about the unbelievable feat, Pluto remained calm in the face of Adrian's hatred. A girl commented excitedly that the 200 points put Pluto at the top of the entire country. The female instructor said that although Pluto was talented, the other elite students should keep up with him. Adrian was extremely indignant at the idea of having to compare himself to and keep up with the rookie. As the heir to one of the city's great clans, he did not accept being surpassed by anyone other than his brother. Adrian flatly refuses to accept that he needs to keep pace with a miserable orphan. Back to the present, Adrian attacks furiously with his sword. Determined to prove his worth, he plans to use his Berserker Knight class to crush the Necromancer and make him look a fool. Laughing like crazy, Adrian's scoreboard updates, showing that he reached only 15 points. Meanwhile, Pluto's invocations keep shredding enemies, raising his score to 79. The skeletal warriors continue fighting against the bronze soldiers in a frenetic combat. One of his skeletons strikes the head of a bronze warrior with precision to take him down for good. With another explosion of successful attacks, Pluto reaches the impressive mark of 100 points. Pluto notices that he lost 14 of his 30 soldiers and recognizes that casualties are inevitable against that horde. He prepares to perform new invocations, knowing he needs to keep his army at maximum strength with his mana at half. He finds the sudden increase in enemies strange and wonders if the same is happening to the others. The director is startled to see that Pluto broke the historical record with 100 points in the middle of the test. Crowley is impressed that 100 bronze warriors have fallen, a feat comparable to defeating a level 5 boss. The elder smiles out of the corner of his mouth and murmurs if the boy is trying to make a fool of him with such power. Crowley releases a massive amount of blue mana into the room, startling the director by his side. Elder Crowley perceives the gravity of the situation and gets extremely tense upon noticing that something very bad is about to happen. An instructor asks if Crowley is okay and questions whether the number of monsters summoned by the students drained his mana too much. Crowley states that he could summon 10,000 bronze soldiers without effort, leaving the instructor confused about the real danger. Crowley wants to know who the score leader is, admitting that he got carried away and sent too many invocations to this student's room. The elder warns that the young man is in danger, but in the testing room, Pluto just gives a confident smile upon hearing Crowley's name. Surrounded by armed bronze soldiers, Pluto complains indignantly, asking what he could have possibly done to deserve that massacre. Pluto was only planning to watch his soldiers fight, but realizes he will need to resort to his own hidden cards. With a decisive snap of his fingers, Pluto activates his special ability to summon the dreaded powder skeletons into the arena. The conversion command is activated, revealing flaming skeletons carrying explosive barrels ready for the detonating attack. Several skeletal warriors rapidly advance across the scenery carrying huge barrels full of gunpowder and covered in fire. With an unrelenting and determined look, Pluto orders his new invocations to blow everything up and reduce the enemies to dust. The powder skeletons charge toward the enemy bronze soldiers, initiating the explosive onslaught. In the test testing room, the instructor discovers that Pluto is the leader and begs Crowley to cancel the invocation before they lose such a promising talent. Observing the data on the magical monitoring panel, one of the female instructors is extremely attentive and surprised by what she sees. Suddenly, she extends her hand and shouts for everyone to wait, interrupting the elder's immediate action of canceling the test. The instructor questions the pause, fearing that Pluto will be torn to pieces in minutes, while the others watch the panel stupefied. Upon directing his gaze to the monitoring display, the instructor is paralyzed and points shocked at the sudden change. The scoreboard on the screen starts to climb in an absurd and extremely fast way, jumping from 201 to 295. Pluto's points keep skyrocketing without stopping, surpassing the 350 mark in a matter of seconds. Sweating cold and unable to believe what he is seeing, the instructor wonders if the student inside is really the young Pluto. Crowley reflects that if a newly awakened person has this much power, with the right training he could be the salvation of nation in the future. While the instructor begs for the young man's safety, Crowley decides to test his limits and promises to intervene if the pace drops. A gigantic explosion consumes the battlefield, and Pluto's scoreboard shoots up unbelievably to 800 points. Successive detonations echo through the testing room as Pluto's score rises rapidly to 900 points. Amidst the smoke and rebel, Crowley's once imposing bronze soldiers now appear destroyed and fallen. Pluto calmly walks through the smoke and notices that some enemies survived, preparing his troops to finish the job. With a firm and merciless command, Pluto orders his undead forces to eliminate each of the remaining survivors. Upon reaching the incredible mark of 1,000 points, Pluto looks around and wonders if he exaggerated by turning the place into a ruin. The score finally stops rising on the screen, leaving the instructors in the control room in complete silence. Shocked and speechless, Elder Crowley realizes the boy was able to annihilate absolutely all the summoned soldiers. Impressed, the instructor suggests bringing Pluto immediately after the test, but Crowley refuses the proposal directly. The elder's immediate refusal leaves the two instructors intrigued, and without understanding what Crowley's next move will be, with an intense and determined look, Crowley announces that he will make a point of going to talk to the young prodigy personally. Crowley activates his teleportation circle, while the instructor questions what will happen to the other students if he leaves now. The elder explains coldly that his actions will not interfere with the bronze soldiers already sent to the other students' rooms. Crowley reflects that if the obtained score is legitimate, the young man's potential is something immeasurable and unprecedented. Anxious to confirm everything with his own eyes, the elder disappears in a beam of blue light to go meet Pluto. Back in the destroyed testing room, Pluto rests his weapon and breathes a sigh of relief for finally finishing off the horde. He admits that facing over 100 soldiers would have been a nasty problem if he hadn't used the mass skeleton invocation. A teleportation light shines suddenly in the room, making Pluto turn around in alert, thinking new enemies are arriving. Observing the blue energy portal form, Pluto finds it strange that only a single presence is emerging this time. Without hesitating, Pluto orders his troops to surround the unknown threat, and the skeletons prepare for combat. The instant Crowley appears on the scene, Pluto's undead soldiers attack immediately and without any mercy. Crowley yells for a stop, and the sharp blades of the invocations halt a millimeter away from the elder's face. Upon analyzing the creatures surrounding him closely, Elder Crowley immediately recognizes the nature of the necromantic soldiers. Surprised to recognize Elder Crowley right there in his testing room, Pluto asks what could have brought the master there. Crowley comments that only rank C necromancers summon such warriors, and Pluto confirms right away that this is his class. The elder explains that ordinary necromancers face a severe limitation of only being able to summon one soldier every 30 minutes. Crowley points out that the test started less than 30 minutes ago, leaving Pluto tense as he is questioned about his secret. With an imposing and distrustful posture, Elder Crowley demands to know how the boy managed to summon so many soldiers at once. Pluto panics upon realizing he has been discovered and hesitates whether or not to tell the whole truth to Elder Crowley. Crowley says he doesn't need excuses and only wants to know if the young man's immense power can be controlled to protect the nation. Pluto reflects that protecting the nation is his mission in this second life, and for that, he needs the support and approval of Elder Crowley. Determined not to reveal all his cards at once, Pluto activates the ability to summon his necromantic soldier. Wielding his immense scythe wrapped in dark energy, Pluto begins to explain how his abilities work to Crowley. Pluto points out that the standard process involves a 30-minute cooldown to summon only one warrior at a time. He adds that these summoned warriors have a maximum active stay duration limited to only 1 hour. With a confident smile, Pluto reveals to the Elder that none of these common restrictions apply to his own power. Pluto makes it clear that, simply put, his undead invocations are completely free of any restriction. The revelation that Pluto possesses unrestricted necromancy leaves Elder Crowley perplexed and wide-eyed. Crowley remains completely silent while he processes the absurd impact of such an extraordinary ability. The Elder concludes that Pluto can command an untiring legion all by himself if he has enough mana, and the young man confirms the theory. Crowley realizes that Pluto's value goes far beyond a promising rookie, reaching a totally different level of importance. Crowley says Pluto's talent is immense, and that after the test, he will go straight to the president to guarantee and protect the boy's future. Crowley enters the portal warning that he will return tomorrow, leaving Pluto stunned as he mentions the influential guild president. The teleportation beam suffers a slight oscillation, catching Pluto's attention and making Crowley interrupt his departure for a moment. Before leaving, Crowley extends his hand and hands an old golden key to Pluto as a special gift coming from the guild. Pluto stares fixedly at the mysterious item in his hand, immediately recognizing the importance of that valuable gift. With an enigmatic look, the experienced elder asks Pluto if he has ever heard about the Rift of Blessing. The young man answers promptly that yes, remembering having studied in detail about this rift during theoretical classes. The Rift of Blessing adjusts to the user's level, offers random monsters, gives excellent experience, and superior drops compared to normal ones. However, access is extremely rare, as it requires a special key whose drop rate in ordinary dungeons is only 0.1%. Realizing the unbelievable value of the item he just received, Pluto asks, surprised, if Elder Crowley is really giving him that. With a serene expression and without hesitation, the Elder confirms the action of gifting the young man with the key that opens the doors to great rewards. The valuable key of blessing is placed in Pluto's hands, granting him a single opportunity to enter the coveted special rift. Crowley finally teleports in a beam of blue light, leaving Pluto alone in the testing room holding the golden key. Determined, Pluto puts the precious item away and decides he will explore the rift right after completing all the mandatory stages of the test. The 30-minute regulatory time comes to an end, and the Academy speakers officially announce the end of the practical test. Exhausted and panting after the grueling clash in the arena, the red, armored student celebrates the end of the tough battle with relief. He rests leaning on his weapon while observing the large number of bronze soldiers he managed to defeat in his testing room. With an arrogant smile, the young man boasts about having defeated about 40 enemies, aiming to surpass Pluto and reach the top of the school. A new broadcast instructs all participants to leave the testing rooms and gather in the outer courtyard for the release of the grades. A crowd of students starts moving noisily toward the meeting point determined by the Aurora Academy instructors. On the way, the students comment on the difficulty of the test, with one of them lamenting having defeated only 7 bronze opponents. The arrogant red, armored rival walks through the courtyard looking for Pluto, wondering if the rival had run away out of fear of the result. Other students spot Pluto walking calmly amidst the crowd, catching the attention of everyone present around. The arrogant red, armored youth approaches Pluto rapidly with long, firm strides, determined to provoke him face to face. He grabs Pluto by the collar of his suit in an aggressive and hostile way, mocking the young man's audacity in still showing up there in the courtyard. Pluto remains impassive in the face of the physical provocation, keeping his hand tightly closed around the precious golden key. The aggressor pulls Pluto even closer, demanding in a mocking tone the fulfillment of the bet to bark in front of the whole school. With a sadistic expression, the arrogant student states he can't wait to see his rival humiliated, crawling on all fours on the courtyard floor. On the terrace, the person in charge asks for silence and order from all the students to begin the official announcement of the freshman test results. The man announces that he will reveal out loud only the top 5 ranked, while the others must consult their respective tutors. 5th place is announced with 39 points, leaving the students impressed with the high level of the competitors coming next. The rival boasts about having scored much higher, while Pluto starts to worry that his own result will draw too much attention. Upon hearing 4th place with 41 points, the aggressor tells Pluto to get ready to bark, but Pluto warns that the announcement is not over. The rival snubs a Necromancer's chances of entering the top 3, right when 3rd place is announced with an impressive 77 points. Luna celebrates her position, shocking the students by the fact that a purifier-type support obtains such an absurd combat score. 2nd place goes to Colin with 95 points, leaving the powerful combatant indignant and questioning who could have taken 1st place. The presenter takes a brief pause and takes a deep breath before revealing the grand winner who reached the absolute top of the overall classification. The presenter announces that Pluto reached 1st place with an incredible 1,000 points. The audience falls into complete silence, shocked by Pluto's unbelievable result. The students freak out upon noticing that he shattered the Academy's previous record of only 97 points. The students wonder how a rank C awakened managed to do this, and recognize that he is on another level. A warrior calculates that 33 kills per minute would be necessary, and gets frustrated with his own rank S. Adrian is totally in shock and sweating cold, unable to understand what happened. The green-haired youth widens his eyes in desperation before that revelation. Adrian trembles with rage behind Pluto, unreconciled with the humiliating defeat. Pluto looks sideways with a mocking smile and reminds him that the rival lost the bet. Adrian accuses Pluto of cheating and backs off, while the protagonist asks if he is going to chicken out. The audience comments on the bet and has fun knowing the loser will have to bark like a dog. With no way out, Adrian ends up falling to his knees on the lawn. He screams, desperately saying it is impossible for a rank C necromancer to get this score. The other students mock him and demand that he fulfill what was agreed, telling him not to be a sore loser. The instructor announces that the winner will receive epic quality equipment from the Blue Dragon Guild. Summoned to the stage, Pluto warns his rival that he won't waste time with trash and tells him to vanish from his sight. The crowd thinks Pluto is kind for sparing him, while Adrian swears to surpass him for being a rank A. The defeated one bites his lips with hatred, promising to make the protagonist suffer 100 times more and kill him. Ignoring the empty threats, Pluto continues walking with tranquility. A glimpse of his frightening necromancer aura appears for an instant behind him. Feeling the overwhelming pressure, Adrian screams in terror and falls backward from the impact. Pluto just casts a cold, silent look before continuing on his way. He climbs the stairs toward the podium under the watchful gazes of everyone. The instructor welcomes him warmly with a friendly pat on the shoulder and congratulates him. He explains that the guild prepared 3 equipment options for the 1st place prize. 3 floating items appear before him, so he can choose the one that best suits his class. Pluto carefully analyzes the attributes and characteristics of the available options. He discards the heavy rhinoceros armor and the wolf sword because they are geared toward tanks and warriors. Without many alternatives, he decides to choose the cloak that grants a generous mana bonus. Putting on the black cloak, Pluto celebrates that the extra mana will allow him to summon many more soldiers at once. the instructor raises Pluto's hand and declares him the champion of the Aurora Academy freshman test. The crowd of students goes wild and starts chanting the new champion's name in unison. The young man sketches a discreet and victorious smile, enjoying the moment of glory. The instructor warns that the next big challenge will be the guild test, which will take place in 1 month. Later, the scene shifts to Pluto's humble residential building in the slum. In his small room, Pluto thoughtfully observes the mysterious key he holds in his hands. Following the book's instructions, he begins to channel his mana into the blessing key. Purple energy begins to crackle and open a dimensional rift right in front of him. He is satisfied to see that the item really allows opening a rift anywhere. He remembers Elder Crowley's advice about the importance of having a healer as support. With a confident smile, Pluto mentally apologizes to the Elder for disobeying the advice. Determined to go it alone, he steps through the dark rift without any hesitation. A bright light shines when he concludes the transition to the new territory. Pluto emerges in a mountainous and deserted region, coming across new creatures. He identifies level 9 blade-tailed leopards, known for being fast and having brutal attacks. Knowing his lack of defense, the young man decides the best strategy is to keep them away. He activates his ability and summons his skeletal soldiers to form a protective barrier. The skeletons position themselves in front of him with paired shields, creating a firm wall. One of the leopards tries to advance, but is impaled by the spearman, yielding 300 experience points. Satisfied with the high reward of ordinary creatures, Pluto foresees he will level up quickly. After clearing the entrance of the blade-tailed leopards, the young man decides it is time to advance even deeper into the dungeon. With most of his soldiers busy protecting him, he realizes he is wasting attack power and needs to sort out his defense soon. One of his skeleton soldiers faces one of the black leopards, which attacks fiercely, using its sharp, reddish tail. The monster roars loudly as the skeleton soldier strikes it, guaranteeing another 300 experience points with the elimination. The young man finally reaches level 10, celebrating having hit double-digit levels after defeating one more enemy. With the achievement of level 10, he unlocks a new ability called Gaze of Death and analyzes the system notification. The description reveals that the ability summons the Eye of the Dead, applying strong crowd control that paralyzes with terror anyone who looks at it. He reflects that as long as the level difference is not huge, he will be able to immobilize adversaries for seconds, which is totally overpowered. However, the 24-hour cooldown makes most hunters discard this technique for being single-use. But he possesses the restriction removal and, if he has enough mana points, he can use this terror infinitely without any cooldown. Suddenly, a rumble echoes through the place as a gigantic paw with sharp claws appears, stepping heavily on the stone floor. Before Pluto and his skeleton soldiers, the colossal blade-tailed leopard king appears, roaring with extreme fury and imposingness. The young man is surprised to realize the dungeon boss has appeared so early in his path. Without wasting time, he raises his scythe and orders his skeleton soldiers to surround the giant monster and then eliminate it for good. The Leopard King moves swiftly, charging against the defense line with its devastating agility and strength. With a single fast slash of its sharp red tail, the beast destroys several skeleton soldiers all at once, scattering the bones. Pluto realizes the boss's speed is absurd, breaking through the encirclement even before the soldiers could position themselves properly. He concludes that at this rate, his entire skeleton army will be annihilated before even managing to deal any damage to the boss. Faced with the critical situation, the young man decides to take the initiative and begins to gather a powerful dark energy around his body. A red and shadowy energy fissure begins to manifest in the air, signaling the preparation of a major combat technique. Black vines and dark mist spread violently across the scenery, while the hunter's magical power rises intensely. An immense red eye opens in the gloomy sky behind the young man, who decides to test the power of his new ability against the terrible boss. He shouts loudly to catch the colossal beast's attention, making the monster look directly in his direction. The leopardkin reacts to the call immediately, turning its head with fury to face the hunter who challenged it. Roaring furiously, the beast is suddenly surrounded by a mist of reddish energy that starts to rise from the ground. With the monster looking straight at him, Pluto displays a confident smile, knowing his mental trap has just been activated. Under the activation of the Gaze of Death ability, the giant scarlet eye glows intensely in the air, surrounded by shadowy skulls. The big leopard roars one last time before being completely paralyzed by the fear effect, becoming totally defenseless. The hunter notes that the boss's level is lower than his, calculating that the fear effect should last at most 5 seconds. Without worrying about the limit, he plans to summon another eye if the effect ends, and activates conversion to powder skeleton. Several skeletons carrying lit powder barrels appear before him, ready to advance against the paralyzed enemy. With a small flame lit at the tip of his finger, the young man points forward and orders his explosive minions to attack the boss. A sequence of massive explosions hits the Leopard King dead on, covering the creature's body with devastating flames and destruction. In the middle of the fire inferno, the beast roars in intense pain while being consumed by the continuous explosions generated by the skeletons. The fear effect finally ends, and the furious monster charges through the explosions to try to counterattack the hunter. Pluto prepares to act again, activating his restriction removal to bypass the cooldown of his eye ability. He uses Gaze of Death once more, immediately interrupting the creature's aggressive advance with another explosion and fear paralysis. The immense red eye appears again in the skies, staring at the dungeon boss from above, and trapping once more in the state of absolute terror. Taking advantage of the new opening, more powder skeletons detonate around the monster, generating a new sequence of fiery explosions. The Leopard King falls defeated and grants 30,000 experience points, making the hunter surprised by the bonus of Elder Crowley's key. Pluto reaches level 11, noting it would be impossible to rise this much in ordinary dungeons, but decides to focus on more urgent priorities now. He recalls that he had just reached level 10 and unlocked a new restriction removal before being interrupted by the boss's attack. The physical form restriction was removed, allowing him to temporarily assume an ethereal form immune to any physical or magical attack. Shocked by the total immunity to damage this ethereal form provides, the young man realizes he has just obtained the ultimate survival ability. Knowing the technique drains his mana quickly while active, he concludes he will need to focus on increasing his maximum mana points. The hunter shifts his gaze to the side suddenly, noticing that a bright golden beam of light has started emanating from the boss's remains. An immense column of golden light erupts from the ground, leaving him thrilled with the possibility of having scored a legendary drop item so early. The scene suddenly shifts to the exterior of an imposing and luxurious classic-style mansion, situated under a clear daytime sky. Inside, a man with long hair and an elegant suit holds a glass of wine while grumbling angrily about the hunter named Pluto. He gets visibly tense and sweaty when recalling the intimidating and disturbing look Pluto displayed during their previous confrontation. The young master grits his teeth in pure anger, dwelling on the fact that he was completely humiliated in front of everyone. Sitting on the sofa in his mansion, he breaks the cup he was holding with his bare hands, making his own blood drip down. A staff member asks if his hand is okay, and the young man angrily orders her to clean everything up fast because an important visitor is arriving. While they tend to his wound, he swears vengeance in his thoughts, promising to show Pluto what happens to anyone who crosses his path. The butler appears at the door of the massive room and informs the young master that his guest has finally arrived. Immediately, the young man angrily expels the female employee, and she scurries away while apologizing for the disturbance. He tells the butler to let the visitor in and then give them absolute privacy so they can talk alone. A mysterious man enters the room, carrying a glowing blue bow on his back, drawing the frightened attention of the servants. The employees whisper among themselves, not understanding how their boss got involved with someone who clearly looks like a real danger. The older butler answers seriously that calling that guy merely dangerous is actually a huge understatement. He explains that the assassin has already completed 33 contracts, and rumors say he can take lives from miles away. A-rank archer Cedric Thornhill warns right off the bat that he charges double if the target of the contract is any woman or child. Smiling out of the corner of his mouth, the young master guarantees that he was expecting this and reveals that the target is a man, to Cedric's disappointment. With disdain, the assassin throws himself onto the luxurious sofa and asks if this target is at least some kind of professional in the field. The young master is visibly surprised by the insight and stutters as he asks how he managed to figure that out. Cedric replies with an ironic smile that the answer is obvious, since the client himself is also one of them. Cedric points out that the client is A-rank and, if he needs outside help to take the guy down, questions whether the target could be in S-rank. The young master sweats coldly and denies it, hesitantly revealing that the opponent's class is actually that of a necromancer. The assassin is shocked upon hearing this, mocking it and calling it a trash class that takes half an hour just to summon a single skeleton. Embarrassed, the young man merely confirms it with an awkward, sheepish laugh, agreeing with the description of the opponent. Cedric can't help himself and starts laughing softly, covering his face with his hand while the young man watches him completely awkwardly. He bursts into laughter and says that an A-rank berserker hiring an assassin because he got beaten up by a C-rank necromancer is the joke of the year. The young man shouts angrily, saying that the guy leveled up absurdly fast, won the rookie test, and is monitored by the Azure Dragon Guild. Upon hearing the name of the Azure Dragon Guild, the assassin gets up from the sofa and admits seriously that this complicates things quite a bit. Apprehensive about the hunter's sudden reaction, the young master swallows hard and begins to ask what that meant. With a greedy smile plastered across his face, Cedric slowly announces that the price for the service just went up. Sighing with relief, the young master tells him not to worry, because money is definitely not a problem. Satisfied with the answer, Cedric walks past the young man, asking only for a photo and basic information so he can track him down. With an extremely frightening and sadistic expression on his face, the assassin promises that he will put a definitive end to the target. The young man replies that he can provide much more than the basics, because he is a classmate of the target and knows exactly where he lives. Cedric thinks the ease is great, while the young man warns him not to fail, fearing the consequences if Azure Dragon finds out. A dark and threatening aura rises around the assassin, who turns around angrily and asks if the client is doubting him. Completely terrified by the pressure, the young master shrinks back in fright and stutters, saying it was just a friendly reminder. Cedric arrogantly retorts that he doesn't need advice coming from trash incapable of dealing with a mere C-rank all by himself. Feeling insulted once again, the young master bites his lips in anger upon being looked at with contempt one more time. He throws himself back onto the luxurious sofa, trying to calm down, and decides to brush off the humiliation for now. With a psychotic and bloodthirsty look, he declares that as long as Pluto dies, it doesn't matter how it happens. In a sudden transition, a purple rift of dimensional energy begins to open in the middle of a dark room. The legendary item Void Cutter is revealed, a dagger that grants 50 agility points and reduces spatial mana consumption. Pluto evaluates the stats of the legendary weapon, but realizes it is useless for a spellcaster, deciding to save it to sell later. He celebrates leveling up twice and obtaining 2 divine abilities in the rift, feeling indebted to Elder Crowley, deciding to rest for the meeting he will have with Elder Crowley the next day. Pluto activates his portal to return home. With a loud sucking noise, the purple energy portal materializes right in the middle of his dark room. Slowly, Pluto's foot steps through the dimensional portal, and he steps back onto the firm floor of his own room. Looking around his room, he remarks that compared to the immensity of the rift, that place now looks like a cage. Suddenly, a beam of blue energy pierces and shatters the bedroom window, scattering shards of glass in all directions. The swift attack hits Pluto square in the chest, piercing his body and leaving the young man completely in shock. Unable to muster any defensive reaction, Pluto's body falls lifelessly to the bedroom floor with a loud thud. Watching from the top of a building at night, Cedric lowers his glowing blue bow and coldly declares that the target has been eliminated. At the Azure Dragon Guild headquarters, the president is left in total shock upon hearing the report that the kid has 200 talent points. Crowley explains that the president became a legend with 120 talent points, but points out that this young man's potential is immeasurable. The counselor goes on to say that with 200 points in the right training, the kid will definitely become a game changer for the entire nation. Intrigued by everything he just heard, the president looks serious and immediately asks which class that talented kid belongs to. Crowley reveals without hesitation that the kid actually belongs to the Necromancer class, leaving the atmosphere in the room very quiet with his answer. The president falls completely silent, just staring out the large window of his office as he reflects on his old companion's words. He remarks that Crowley has much more experience and knows full well that the class limits maximum force potential, and C class is considered weak. But Crowley counters by saying that is precisely the curious point, because the mysterious young man somehow managed to break all class limits. The president's eyes begin to glow intensely in a golden shade as he realizes that revelation could change the destiny of the entire guild. The elder continues his explanation, looking impressed, and reveals that the kid was able to achieve the legendary feat of performing unlimited summons. The president is shocked to understand that with enough energy, the kid would be able to command a true army of the undead all by himself. He asks about possible legendary items behind this, but the elder guarantees that the kid was using only a completely ordinary staff in the rift. Knowing that the kid is a true genius who broke the system's rules, the president immediately decides he needs to meet him no matter what. In a rush to find him, the president firmly asks where the kid is at this exact moment so he can go to him in person. Crowley shares that he handed a blessing key to the young man, so he must be facing the dangers of a special blessing rift right now. The president grows concerned about his safety, but the elder reassures him by stating that he advised the young man to enter the portal accompanied by support. He believes that with the kid's immense summoning power, the presence of any healer as support would be more than enough to keep him safe. The leader sits down thoughtfully, concluding that a necromancer with no summoning limits could be the greatest weapon for the country's survival in the upcoming war. In the middle of the night, a blue energy arrow cuts across the sky at high speed, passing between the tall buildings of the noisy city. The projectile hits the young man's bedroom window with extreme violence, shattering all the glass, which scatters in glowing pieces across the bedroom floor. The swift attack catches Pluto totally by surprise and hits him square in the back, piercing his body in a moment of pure brutality and tension. Atop a building, the assassin Cedric celebrates the quick elimination of the target, but Layman's arriving too late to steal the blessing key. With an extremely sadistic smile on his face, he prepares to have fun watching the despair that will take over the scene in the coming hours of horror. He plans to wait patiently until the kid's teammates come out of the rift and find the lifeless body dumped on the bedroom floor. Suddenly, the dimensional portal begins to slowly disappear from the floor with a trail of dark energy that completely fades away in that spot. Cedric notices that the portal has closed completely, but grows quite confused upon realizing that no one other than Pluto came out of that mysterious rift. The assassin panics as he considers the possibility that the young man actually entered the rift alone and managed to walk out alive from such a difficult challenge. Sitting amid the broken shards of glass, Pluto takes a deep breath and remarks to himself that that situation was a real, unexpected close call. The young man acknowledges that if he hadn't activated his incorporeal form in time, that sneak attack would certainly have ended his life right there. Annoyed at being cowardly attacked, right after coming out of an exhausting rift, Pluto complains about going through a near-death experience out of nowhere. Taken by an overwhelming fury, the kid activates his special ability called Gaze of Death, making his eye glow in a vibrant red shade. In the distance, Cedric spots that frightening glow and panics, not understanding how the kid survived an attack that should have been fatal. The assassin feels the terrible effect of fear spread through his body and falls into absolute panic upon realizing he is completely unable to move. He tries to regain control of his mind, reminding himself that the distance between them is huge and the opponent won't be able to attack him from that far away. The archer convinces himself that he just needs to endure the effect of the temporary paralysis in order to use one of his many techniques and finish off the young man. He focuses all his attention on resisting the terrible mental pressure of fear while keeping his eyes fixed on the window from which the terrifying power emanates. Meanwhile, Pluto reveals that his initial intention was to play dead to lure the enemy in, but he is surprised by the assassin's extreme caution. However, he isn't shaken and says how is a backup strategy as an armored skeleton silently appears behind the hunter. Cedric senses the dark presence and falls into absolute shock upon coming face to face with a necromantic soldier right behind his back without him noticing. Before he can muster any defensive reaction, the hunter is hit squarely by the skeleton's sword strike, which pierces his back with force. With the heavy impact, the hunter manages to break free from the terrible paralysis effect and quickly moves away from the monster in a desperate motion. He boasts about being level 18 and shouts arrogantly that a single filthy skeleton would never be able to break his powerful physical defense. Free from the paralysis, the archer smiles confidently and declares that now is the time to turn the insolent young man into a real arrow target. But his expression instantly changes to absolute panic when he feels a new wave of evil energy start to surround him from all sides. The hunter looks up at the sky and trembles with dread upon seeing that the terrible giant eye of red light has manifested above him once again. Applying more control, Cedric tries to calm down by reminding himself that necromancers take 30 minutes to summon each soldier, and the kid won't be able to keep him trapped that long. Pluto analyzes the enemy and realizes he has at least 5 levels of strength over him, so a single skeleton would only cause minimal damage. With a confident look, the young necromancer smiles out of the corner of his mouth and comments that luckily for him, his armies of undead soldiers simply never run out. He extends his weapon and activates his necromantic soldier summoning technique, causing dozens of restless souls to appear around the hunter. Cedric is completely terrified upon seeing the absurd amount of creatures appearing before him, not understanding how a kid can summon so much. Desperate, the assassin realizes that this monstrous power cannot be rank and curses Adrian with hatred for lying about the target's strength. With a firm gesture, Pluto orders his armies to advance mercilessly against the sniper, starting a true hunt through the city streets, letting out extremely frightening battle cries. The skeletons begin to run at high speed along the walls of the huge buildings. The terrifying bone monsters scale the glass structures of the buildings with bizarre ease, moving as if they were killer spiders. They smash the windows of the buildings along the way, forcing their way through with their sharp weapons and bony claws, starving for human blood. The undead completely surround the top of the building where the sniper is, leaving the hunter with no escape route or chances of getting away. One of the skeleton warriors leaps into the air with his sword raised, delivering a swift strike against Cedric, who tries to retreat as fast as he can. Pluto observes the progress of his soldiers from the ground and thinks to himself that things would be a lot easier if necromancers could fly, completely surrounded and with no alternatives. The hunter falls to his knees, begging for his own life and asking to negotiate directly with Pluto. Suddenly, Pluto speaks to him mentally, questioning with a sarcastic tone how a defeated assassin could be useful for his plans. The young man appears in person on the roof of the building, accompanied by more soldiers, and tells the assassin to quickly convince him to spare his worthless life. Desperate, Cedric promises to reveal the exact identity of the person who paid for the assassination if the young man guarantees he will let him walk out of there alive. With a cold look, Pluto says he already knows it was Adrian Blackwood who hired him and promises to settle that score in person very soon. The assassin panics completely upon realizing the young man already knew the whole truth and screams in fright, not understanding how he managed to find out. He begs on his knees, promising promising to kill up to 3 targets for free. But Pluto counters by saying an assassin must always be ready for his own death. Looking contemptuously at the trembling man, Pluto agrees that he could indeed be useful for his future evolution. However, he concludes coldly that this usefulness will only truly begin after the assassin is completely dead. Without hesitating for another second, Pluto extends his large dark scythe and gives the definitive order for his soldiers to execute the cowardly hunter. Cedric screams desperately, crying out for mercy and promising to do anything, while the giant skeleton raises its heavy axe in the air. The bone executioner brings his sharp weapon down at high speed, cutting through the wind with a frightening noise and delivering the final blow onto the trapped target. A terrible scream of pain echoes through the night, while drops of blood splash through the air, marking the definitive end of the dangerous assassin Cedric's life. With the job done, Pluto walks calmly toward the lifeless body of the hunter lying on the ground as pools of blood begin to spread. Suddenly, Pluto loses his strength and collapses to his knees on the cold floor, feeling the terrible physical and mental exhaustion take its toll at that moment. Panting, he celebrates finally finishing that intense combat, but realizes his magical energy is almost completely depleted. He analyzes his stats, seeing that using his incorporeal form for a second consumed a lot of energy, added to the death gazes and mass summons. The young man calms down, remembering that the range of his summons was his salvation, allowing him to place a soldier outside the bedroom. It was precisely that soldier who received orders to track and ambush the assassin while he was focused on attacking Pluto from a distance. He explains that he used himself as bait to capture the hunter's full attention, while his stealthy servant successfully positioned himself at the enemy's back. Leaning on his weapon, Pluto complains about the terrible feeling of emptiness that consumes his body whenever his mana points get close to 0. He looks at Cedric and admits that the opponent's ability to land perfect shots from miles away was something truly terrifying. Preparing to test his new ability, Pluto prays that the extraction process won't drain the rest of his remaining mana. He channels his magic over the lifeless body, causing streams of purple energy to begin extracting the vital essence of the defeated enemy. A system notification warns that the evolution lock has been removed, allowing him to use the enemy's soul to evolve one of his servants. A small flame of glowing purple energy floats in his hand, and the young man smiles, confirming that this is indeed the assassin's powerful soul. Next, he injects the dark soul directly into the body of a nearby skeleton to start the monster's evolutionary transformation process. The skeleton begins to glow intensely in purple shades as the evolution barrier is permanently undone by the power of the A-rank soul. A massive storm of spiritual energy forms around the bone soldier, wrapping his entire body in a glowing whirlpool of power. The flow of purple power reaches its physical peak, revealing the imposing silhouette of the servant, who is about to reach his new and terrifying form. The system confirms the complete evolution of the servant into an A-rank hexagonalized sniper, detailing his incredible long-range abilities. The new warrior resurfaces wearing an imposing dark armor and glowing blue eyes that show he inherited the hunter's talent. Pluto celebrates the servant's new range and precision abilities, knowing he will level up alongside the master's own growth. However, a red alert warning pops up on the screen informing that the new soldier's evolution is incomplete, making it impossible to use him in combat. The young man is extremely confused by that sudden system message and questions what could still be missing to complete the process. Pluto puts his hand on his chin and begins to deeply analyze the situation, trying to figure out what factor is preventing his servant's activation. With his eyes narrowed and focused on the problem, the kid starts to suspect an important detail that perhaps went unnoticed by him. He looks at the terrace floor and suddenly wonders if the problem actually isn't related to the weapons used by the dead enemy. Pluto picks up Cedric's beautiful glowing blue bow, which the system identifies as an epic, quality item capable of granting 50 mana points. Despite being an epic weapon, he finds its effects quite boring since it only grants simple mana bonuses with no special abilities. Holding the beautiful bow, he extends his arm toward the glowing-eyed servant to test if handing over the weapon would finally complete the evolution. As soon as the sniper holds the bow, a massive wave of blue power surrounds him, and the system finally confirms that the evolution has been successfully completed. Pluto smiles with relief, understanding that undead soldiers also need proper weapons in order to enter combat at their maximum strength. Pluto hands Cedric's bow to the sniper and friendly warns him to use that for now, promising to give him better weapons in the future. To the kid's utter surprise, the armored skeleton bows his head respectfully and replies out loud that he will do exactly as he commands. Pluto is completely in shock upon hearing the creature and wonders confusedly if his evolved undead soldiers now know how to speak as well. The skeleton soldier simply confirms calmly, while his glowing blue eyes stare at the master with total loyalty and attention. Kneeling before Pluto, the bone servant respectfully reveals that he has a small request to make, leaving the young necromancer curious. He raises his head and humbly asks his master to grant him a proper name so he can carry it with pride in battle. Pluto is thoughtful about the servant's request and starts reflecting on the importance of choosing a good name for his first evolved soldier. He agrees in his thoughts that calling him only by the system's technical name would be extremely lame and very impractical in daily life. The kid tells the servant that since he is his first special and very valuable creation, the choice of his name deserves to be thought out quite calmly. He closes his eyes for a moment, trying to remember some strong reference from his past that would live up to the power of that elite soldier. Suddenly, Pluto's mind travels back in time, and he begins to recall an important military mission that took place during his past life on Earth. He remembers a silent, veteran soldier who was patiently loading his sniper rifle with heavy golden bullets in a corner. Back then, young Pluto was still an inexperienced recruit and questioned whether that weapon would really be able to hit the enemy commander from afar. Another, older soldier drew Pluto's attention and asked, laughing, if the rookie really had no idea who that legendary sniper was. The veteran explained enthusiastically that that man was a living legend capable of blowing enemy commanders' heads off from miles away. He revealed with great pride that all opponents on the battlefield feared the legendary sniper, calling him the Distant Reaper. Through the lens of the rifle's telescopic scope, it was possible to see the enemy leader ordering his guards to carry out a terrifying hostage execution. The cruel commander shouted angrily, demanding that his men stab the bodies lying on the ground to ensure no one there stayed alive. Without hesitating a single thousandth of a second, the legendary sniper pulled the trigger of his sniper rifle, firing the lethal bullet toward the distant target. A deafening boom echoed across the region as the projectile traveled at absurd speed, tearing through the air between the abandoned buildings. The fatal bullet grazed the frightened guards and went in a straight line without anyone there having time to notice the impending danger. In a fraction of a second, the cruel commander's head exploded violently, cutting off his shouts and splashing blood onto the wall behind him. The surviving soldiers fell into generalized panic, shouting desperately for everyone to seek urgent shelter because of the sniper. Young Pluto stood with his jaw dropped, not believing that the sniper managed to hit a perfect target from over 2 miles away. With his eyes shining with pure admiration, the young recruit stared at the veteran, feeling a huge desire to learn everything about that profession. He ran up to the man respectfully and asked him enthusiastically what his name was, begging him to teach him the techniques of the perfect shot. With a slight smile on his face, the experienced sniper revealed that his combat code name was Archer and friendly asked the rookie's name. Back to the present reality, Pluto smiles out of the corner of his mouth as he fondly remembers the man who changed his view on combat techniques. He looks at the kneeling skeleton and solemnly declares that from that exact moment on, the name of his powerful warrior would be Archer. The skeleton thanks him immensely, accepting the name, and the system updates his stats, confirming the servant's successful evolution to A rank. Pluto orders Archer to return to his summoning dimension, and the bone creature quickly dissolves into a dark mist with blue sparkles. A message on the screen shows that Pluto now has only one occupied identified slot out of 5 possible ones to maintain his evolved undead soldiers. He reflects that since the spaces are extremely limited, each future evolution choice must focus solely on the maximum potential for strength and defense. The young man sighs with relief for not wasting a precious evolution slot on weak dungeon monsters, which would be a huge idiot move. Suddenly, a green magic circle begins to glow intensely on the terrace floor, putting the kid on high alert with the surprise. He soon realized that this glowing teleportation light is identical to the one he saw during the rookie practical test and slowly relaxes his guard. Elder Crowley emerges from the portal of light, revealing that the president was extremely worried about Pluto's safety and sent him there in a hurry. However, upon looking to the side, the old counselor falls into complete shock and widens his eyes. Unable to believe what he was seeing, he points fearfully at the huge pools of blood on the terrace floor and asks, horrified, what could have happened in that place to be so serious. As the wind blows hard among the dark buildings of the big city, the two talk in private about what happened on top of that building. Crowley asks in surprise if the young man was really attacked by a mysterious assassin the exact second he set foot out of the rift. Pluto sweats nervously, thinking that if he had taken one more second to recall Archer, his evolution secret would have been discovered by the Elder. Elder Crowley suspiciously asks about the whereabouts and health status of his teammate, leaving the young man totally awkward. Upon noticing the kid's silence, Crowley's expression quickly shifts to an extremely serious, angry and worry-filled look. The Elder rages angrily and asks if Pluto totally ignored his danger warnings and decided to enter the Blessing Rift challenges alone. He shouts, asking if the kid has any idea of the huge loss his death would bring to the guild, but Pluto calmly replies that he would never be defeated. Crowley sighs and thinks that the kid's reckless arrogance perfectly mirrors the personality of the guild president himself in his youth. To change the subject, the kid asks the reason for that surprise visit in the middle of the night, since their meeting was scheduled for tomorrow only. The Elder explains that he reported the situation to the president, and he demanded that Crowley escort the young man to the Azure Dragon headquarters immediately. Pluto agrees to accompany him and glances sideways at the blood on the floor, thinking that things around there are about to get quite eventful. Crowley says the logistics team will take care of everything and guarantees a complete report on the attack will be ready before they reach headquarters. Pluto looks around, confused, and asks if the Elder won't conjure a teleportation magic circle to take them directly to the guild. Crowley explains that he isn't of the spatial class, but Pluto counters by reminding him that he saw him appear out of nowhere in the academy courtyard, and also just now. The Elder reveals that those portals were made by professional spatial mages and questions if Pluto thought there was a portal in the building. With a serious look, Crowley reveals that he actually drew a used teleportation circle directly onto Pluto's clothes beforehand. The young Necromancer gets completely startled and jumps back, unable to believe the old counselor's bold revelation. Crowley tells the kid to relax because the teleportation seal was disposable and has already dissolved completely after fulfilling its single escape function. The purple magic mark drawn on the back of Pluto's jacket glows one last time and then completely disappears without leaving a trace. At that exact moment, a luxurious black limousine with tinted windows parks silently right in front of the entrance sidewalk of the large building. Two employees wearing green tracksuits bow respectfully and announce to Crowley that their transport has finally arrived. The Elder dryly orders the men to go up to the terrace to retrieve the dead assassin's body and bring back a complete report of his identity. The men accept the order promptly while Pluto observes their clothes, concluding that they are logistics staff who don't fight. Crowley tells the kid to get into the luxury vehicle right away, reminding him that the guild president definitely doesn't like to keep anyone waiting. The luxury car speeds up quickly, vanishing into the middle of the night, while the two cleanup employees watch the vehicle's departure from afar. One of the workers remarks in surprise, and with a tone of envy, that the guild's vice president himself is serving as a personal escort for the kid. The other employee confesses in a gossipy tone that he secretly used his detection skill to take a peek at that student's class. The first worker bets that he is a hidden S-rank genius, but his companion reveals in surprise that the kid is actually a C-rank necromancer. The man goes into shock, saying that's impossible since the guild's logistics sector requires at least B-rank adventurers in their teams. The man goes into shock, saying that's impossible since the guild's logistics sector requires at least B-rank adventurers in their teams. The other worker stutters in fright, remembering that his partner's spying techniques are so perfect that they go unnoticed even by S ranks. Sweating cold with dread, they conclude that someone capable of detecting subtle tracking and sending fake data back is a dangerous monster. Inside the car, Pluto reflects anxiously that he didn't expect come face to face with the top leader of the most powerful guild in the entire country so soon. Elder Crowley looks seriously at the kid and tells him to keep his focus and calm his restless mind, because they have just arrived at their destination. The imposing and gigantic tower of the Azure Dragon Guild rises majestically against the dark night clouds, showing all its prestige and strength. The young necromancer is very impressed by the guild's magnificent visual, while the elder steps out of the car and orders the kid to follow him. The two walk together to the huge main stone gates, which have a gigantic and threatening oriental dragon carved in relief upon them. The huge flag of the Azure Dragon Guild flutters hard in the wind at the top of the headquarters' luxurious entrance, displaying the location's total sovereignty. As soon as they enter the reception, the heavily armed guards bow respectfully and welcome Crowley back to the grand headquarters. Without wasting time with formalities, the elder seriously orders the guards to take him directly to the meeting room with the president. The group begins to walk through the guild's corridors under the watchful escort of elite knights who march with heavy steps and serious faces. Pluto notices the guards' armor and concludes they are A-rank holy knights equipped with elite level 50 items at the very least. Before the large door, the elite knight warns that their ranks are too low to proceed and respectfully bids the elder farewell. The counselor simply thanks him with a quick nod, keeping his usual stern expression as the guards withdraw through the guild corridors. Crowley turns to the young man and authoritatively warns him that he must open that large gray door and enter for the conversation alone from then on. Pluto thinks, impressed, that a level 50 paladin would be the leader in any guild, but there he isn't even allowed to get close. With a firm push, the heavy gray doors begin to open slowly, revealing the huge presidential room, bathed in the faint moonlight. At the back of the massive office, the dark silhouette of the guild president appears, sitting in his luxurious chair, facing the city window. Leader Victor recites Cedric Thornhill's data, remembering that he is a feared level 18 assassin wanted for dozens of deaths. Pluto is quite surprised by Azure Dragon's intelligence efficiency for already having the sniper's complete criminal record so fast. Victor comments that disregarding bizarre cases, the theoretical limit for an S rank to defeat an A rank is a difference of only 3 levels. He turns around, revealing his golden eyes, and says it's absurd for a C rank like Pluto to eliminate an A rank assassin 7 levels above him. The leader states that even with unlimited summons, Cedric's surgical precision should have killed the kid long before any army emerged. S-rank blood warrior Victor Langley stands up imposingly in his heavy armor and demands to know how much real power the kid is hiding. Pluto widens his eyes and feels a terrible chill run down his spine upon noticing a sudden, frightening change in the atmosphere of that enclosed room. A terrible and overwhelming aura of murderous intent begins to emanate from the president's body, blanketing the entire environment with a suffocating pressure. Elsewhere, young Master Adrian Blackwood listens angrily to the automated message that Cedric's cell phone number is out of service at the moment. He goes possessed with rage, squeezing his cell phone tightly while complaining that the assassin promised to settle everything fast, but vanished all night. Unable to contain himself, Adrian crushes his own cell phone with his hands in a fit of blind fury while screaming, asking where Cedric is. The young man throws the plastic pieces onto the sofa and bitterly agrees with his brother upon concluding that hired assassins are just useless scum. Knowing he has no other viable alternative to solve the problem, Adrian reluctantly decides he will have to call him personally. Finding no other way out, Adrian hurriedly grabs his spare cell phone and decides that the only option now is to ask his brother for reinforcements. On the other end of the line, his brother answers, wanting to know what it is about, but Adrian vents in a tone of desperation, saying that he urgently needs help. The brother gets furious upon hearing that someone dared to mess with the Blackwood family, while Adrian tearfully complains that he was humiliated and made a fool of by some idiot. Upon hearing that absurd revelation about his younger brother's humiliation, the man becomes extremely angry, shouting indignantly on the other end of the line. The brother tells him to stay calm, explaining that he is currently in the middle of an important official guild mission, but promises to take care of the matter. He reveals that he is facing a terrifying level 35 Rift Bear King, but guarantees that as soon as he finishes off the monster, he will head to the city. Holding the phone with one hand, the warrior channels his flames and shouts furiously for the monster to get out of his way, preparing for the attack. He deals a devastating punch bathed in fire straight to the giant bear's face, generating an absurd explosion that sends all the local snow flying away. The impact of the destructive technique is so violent that the giant creature is thrown backward without being able to manage any quick defensive reaction. The man takes a deep breath, trying to catch his breath after the effort, while the ashes and smoke from his destructive attack slowly begin to clear. Back at the imposing Azure Dragon Guild headquarters, the main tower shines under the dark sky, indicating that the decisive clash is just beginning. Inside the luxurious presidential office, Leader Victor Langley approaches with heavy steps and shouts, demanding to know how much strength Pluto is hiding. Pluto does not back down from danger and decides to raise his large scythe, conjuring a dense mist of purple power around his body to defend himself. He stares at the guild president with a defiant look and shouts firmly that the secrets of his abilities are nobody else's business. Feeling insulted by the boy's insolence, the leader gets completely furious and roars threateningly, decreeing that Pluto is completely dead right there. Victor charges at Pluto at an absurd speed, resembling a golden wild beast, which leaves the young necromancer in a state of extreme shock. With no time to lose, the young man immediately activates his death gaze technique, making his eye glow in a bright red tone of panic. He uses his necrometric soldier summoning magic, causing bone warriors with purple flames to emerge from the ground to block the leader. Pluto retreats hastily, concluding that he desperately needs to escape that enclosed room to have enough space to be able to fight freely. The huge and scary red light eye manifests on the ceiling while Pluto prays that his techniques can buy at least a little time. However, the guild leader completely ignores the magical barrier and advances at high speed, cutting through the purple flames as if they were nothing. His golden eyes glow in the middle of the fire, showing that he is immune to the weaker mind. Control spells the young necromancer possesses. Victor destroys the undead with a single strike, shouting that the boy's tactics are nothing more than foolish tricks, since his fear lasted a fraction of a second. Pluto falls into despair upon noticing that his most powerful mental paralysis ability was not able to delay the president, even for a single thousandth of a second. He can only mentally pray that the rest of his skeletal warriors can somehow slow down the enemy's brutal onslaught. But with extreme ease, the elite warrior destroys the shields and breaks the bones of all of Pluto's soldiers, turning them into pure dust. Through the pieces of bone floating in the air, Victor's threatening silhouette emerges intact, leaving the boy impressed by such a huge difference in power. Pluto decides to change his strategy and quickly summons another necrometric warrior. While trying to figure out a new way to escape that situation, he activates the servant's transformation into a gunpowder skeleton whose skull glows intensely with yellow flames, ready to blow up everything in the area. The boy orders the creature to blow up the entire room, and the skeleton runs carrying a huge gunpowder barrel with a red skull drawing on it. The suicide soldier leaps at the guild leader at high speed under Pluto's tense gaze. As he prays that the destructive attack will work, a gigantic and devastating explosion takes over the entire meeting room, generating an immense curtain of fire and black smoke that destroys the windows. Pluto observes the scene with a sadistic look and thinks that since the opponent likes receiving blows directly on his body so much, he will get what he wants. He summons dozens of other gunpowder skeletons that run straight into the middle of the fire, screaming madly and generating new destructive bursts. Successive violent explosions shatter all the glass at the top of the skyscraper, illuminating the dark night with extremely hot flames of fire. Outside, the guards hear the noise and comment curiously that the president must be testing the new recruit in a rather rough way. They agree that causing continuous damage of that proportion proves that the boy is a true elite S rank, worthy of drawing so much attention. In the destroyed room, Pluto breathes with great difficulty and fatigue while leaning on his scythe and trying to see the result through the smoke. He thinks that not even the strongest warrior in the country would be able to come out unscathed after receiving dozens of gunpowder explosions directly to the chest. However, the smoke clears and reveals President Victor Langley standing in the same position, displaying an intact armor that glows under fire sparks. Pluto's eyes widen in complete terror and absolute shock, unable to comprehend the absurd level of physical resistance of that elite warrior. He trembles upon noticing that the opponent took a brutal sequence of point-blank explosive attacks and did not suffer even a single scratch of damage. Victor disdainfully brushes the ashes off his heavy metal armor and lets out a mocking laugh, showing total superiority against the young man's tactics. The boy panics and decides that if dozens of skeletons weren't enough, he will summon hundreds to bury the opponent in explosions. He raises his weapon again, conjuring an immense amount of dark mist while trying to perform his largest and most destructive mass summon. But before he can complete the spell, Victor's gigantic hand emerges from the middle of the wind with absurd speed. Grabbing the young man's neck, the president lifts Pluto into the air, suffocating the boy who can barely breathe, while demanding that he confess once and for all what his secrets are. With an expression of pure fury, Victor rants right in the young man's face, commanding with maximum authority that he tell the whole truth about his strength. Pluto grits his teeth, feeling the terrible pressure of the grip on his throat as cold sweat drips down his face, but he refuses to yield. With a sadistic and mocking smile on his face, Pluto raises his arm with his metal gauntlet and gives the middle finger right in the guild president's face. Surprised by the boy's daring attitude, the president immediately releases his grip on his throat and drops him all at once, making Pluto fall to the floor. Pluto falls to his knees, coughing heavily as he tries to catch his breath in his lungs after being suffocated by the powerful warrior's overwhelming strength. To the young man's surprise, the president breaks into a wide, sincere smile and announces in a good-humored tone that Pluto has just successfully passed the evaluation. Completely confused, Pluto massages his atching neck and asks distrustfully what the leader is talking about, since that felt like a real death match. The boy gets furious upon realizing that all that scary aggressiveness was actually just a secret test planned by the guild leaders. Crowley calmly explains that he asked the president to go hard because only real danger reveals a warrior's true strength and unshakable character. Pluto sits in the chair, puffing with anger, and comments in an ironic tone that he didn't expect such a sneaky attitude from an elder with such a kind appearance. Leader Victor asks him not to blame Crowley, arguing that it would be useless to invest valuable resources in someone who collapses under heavy mental pressure. He admits that he was very impressed with the young man, not only because of the limitless summons, but mainly because of his steel determination in combat. Victor formally introduces himself as the president of Azure Dragon, while Pluto listens in silence, trying to understand what will come next in the conversation. The young necromancer stares at the armored leader very closely, paying attention to every word so as not to show any sign of weakness or hesitation. Next, Pluto shakes the president's hand firmly and introduces himself in a simple and confident manner as the necromancer who is going to change the course of things. The two seal the deal with a respectful handshake under the satisfied gaze of Counselor Crowley, who watches everything everything in silence at the back of the room. Victor states that the boy's character was fully approved in the test, but points out that his real combat power still needs a new check. The young man panics at the possibility of facing another round of insane tests and immediately asks if the president is planning to fight again. Victor explains that the level difference between them is way too big to generate useful data and therefore proposes a special external mission to evaluate Pluto. He dares the boy to clear the level 15 Goblin Cave on Doomsday difficulty all by himself, promising maximum resources in case of success. Counselor Crowley stares at the boy with some apprehension, waiting anxiously to see what the Necromancer's final answer will be to that challenge. Pluto mentally repeats the extreme conditions of the mission and realizes that facing a level 15 dungeon on maximum difficulty will not be simple at all. Victor guarantees that even if he fails, the boy will be accepted into the guild, but points out that he will not receive any special support or team resources. Without hesitating, Pluto raises his head with a determined look and announces out loud that he gladly accepts the extreme challenge proposed by the president. Victor praises the young man's courage and smiles out of the corner of his mouth, saying he sincerely hopes his real skills live up to all that attitude. Pluto leaves the room, closing the door, and remembers that school textbooks explain that monsters on Doomsday difficulty are immensely stronger. The boy knows that the level 15 dungeon is 4 levels above him, but is determined to win to secure the full support of the country's largest guild. In the office, Crowley questions the president, stating he understands the desire to test the young man's limits, but argues that the conditions are way too severe. The elder reminds him that at level 12, Victor himself needed a group of 4 heroes, and almost died to conquer that cave, and now he is asking him to go alone. Victor counters by saying that if the boy is just average, the total investment of resources would be useless since they need someone who surpasses limits. The leader states with conviction that the warrior chosen to receive Azure Dragon's maximum power must obligatorily stand out among the rest. He declares that this young man must become the strongest adventurer of the entire current generation, while Pluto finally arrives at the entrance of the dreaded dungeon. The boy confirms that he rested well before coming, fully recovering his mana points after the tiring test, being in perfect physical condition. Without blinking, Pluto selects the dangerous Doomsday difficulty on the system panel to immediately start his survival test. The dungeon portal glows with an intense and frightening light as the dungeon energy activates to receive the solitary challenger. The young Necromancer takes the decisive step and crosses the glowing energy portal, disappearing amid the red lights toward the hidden dangers. Nearby adventurers are astonished to see a student enter the cave alone and comment that doing that without an A-rank class is pure suicide. One of them guarantees that he saw the boy choose the Doomsday difficulty, leaving his partner shocked because nobody below level 15 has ever done such a feat. Walking through the damp darkness of the Goblin Cave, Pluto recalls that books described the creatures of that place with just 2 strong words. Deep in the dark hallway, 2 glowing yellow eyes emerge from the shadows, confirming that those monsters are actually extremely brutal. The system confirms the entry into the cave on Doomsday difficulty, while bizarre noises of footsteps begin to echo through the damp stone walls. A group of green goblins armed with pointed wooden clubs appears, laughing hysterically and sadistically upon spotting the invader in their territory. Pluto wields his dark combat side and calmly assesses that there are about 100 monsters in the place, concluding that it will be a good fight. Smiling out of the corner of his mouth, the boy activates his ability and teasingly remembers that the number of his skeletal warriors easily surpasses the enemy's. He orders his bone soldiers to attack with everything, making dozens of skeletons advance like an relentless wave over the little monsters. The enemy scream in terror as they are massacred, while system notifications pop up on the screen confirming the gain of large amounts of experience. Pluto is amazed by the amount of experience obtained in the extreme mode and realizes that clearing the place could make him level up very fast. A glowing magical aura of blue energy surrounds the boy's body, confirming that his progress at level 11 increased considerably fast. He observes the ashes of the fallen goblins on the floor and concludes with satisfaction that all opponents at the dungeon entrance have been completely eliminated. With the path clear, Pluto decides that now has arrived the exact moment to advance deeper into the goblin cave in search of new combats. He laments that the summoning range is only 16 feet, as he would love to be able to summon his soldiers from afar and let them clear everything by themselves. The boy opens a slight ironic smile and mentally wonders if he isn't having desires that are too easy and dreaming too high with his abilities. Pluto hurries his steps upon noticing that his skeleton troops have already advanced quite far into the dark hallway and decides to follow them closely for combat. A skeleton cuts down an elite goblin with force, generating a notification that confirms another 1,000 valuable experience points for the boy's progress. Pluto walks quietly, holding his scythe, and comments in surprise that he has encountered very few enemies so far, questioning if he is already at the end. Right after that, he shakes his head negatively, knowing very well that the demanding guild president would never prepare such a simple and easy test. Suddenly, an absurdly loud rumble echoes from inside the tunnel, violently shaking the stone walls and making pieces of rock fall to the floor. The entire cave begins to shake non-stop with a scary rumble, indicating that some gigantic and dangerous creature is moving through the dungeon. The boy turns around quickly and warns his bone companions that something huge is approaching their current position at high speed. With a gesture of authority, Pluto orders his soldiers to advance without fear toward the darkness of the rift to intercept the mysterious monster. But in the blink of an eye, the bone warriors are completely smashed to pieces by a devastating blow, leaving Pluto surprised by the impact. The young Necromancer is quite impressed by the opponent's brutal strength, since it is the first time he sees his own warriors being torn to shreds. He makes a grimace and becomes extremely serious upon concluding that the true boss monster of that difficult dungeon has finally decided to reveal itself for combat. Gigantic and destructive footsteps shake the cave with extreme force as the opponent's terrible silhouette approaches Pluto and his remaining troops. The boy cracks a bold smile in the face of danger and ironically greets the gigantic creature, praising its triumphal and intimidating entry into the fight. With a terrible rumble, the colossal level 10 goblin emerges, breaking the stone wall with ease and revealing itself as the dreaded dungeon boss. Pluto realizes that the gunpowder skeleton would be perfect against the rival's size, but laments that the beast attacked way too fast before the conversion. He orders some warriors to hold the giant, while he takes advantage of the distraction to convert the other remaining undead into gunpowder bombs. Obeying the order, the bone soldiers advance at high speed against the colossal monster, trying to grab its attention no matter what, but with a single movement of its gigantic spiked club, the monster destroys the bone barriers and crushes Pluto's soldiers as if they were toys. The young man takes advantage of the instant to perform his conversion spell, transforming his undead into powerful and dangerous gunpowder skeletons. In the middle of the dust, the giant goblin's terrible glowing reddish eye focuses directly on Pluto, showing that it lost the distraction in combat. The colossal boss lets out a savage roar of fury and brings down its heavy metal club with extreme violence, destroying the stone floor around the boy. Pluto widens his eyes in complete shock upon realizing that he was spotted quickly and that the rival's huge club is about to crush him once and for all. The metal club hits the floor with a devastating impact that generates an immense dust cloud and completely destroys the floor where the young man was standing. The giant roars victoriously, believing that he eliminated the intruder with ease, while drooling with hatred and focusing his attention on the rest of the destroyed dungeon. However, in the middle of the rocks, Pluto manages to activate his incorporeal form in time to save himself from the mortal attack, transforming into a pure spiritual mist. The young man materializes back and sighs in relief, commenting to himself that he would have died a tragic death. He didn't possess that rare ability. He opens a sadistic smile and announces that now it is his turn to attack, immediately activating his death technique to immobilize the rival. The immense red eye of spiritual energy appears floating right in front of the colossal goblin's face, scaring the monster with its terrible dark aura. Paralyzed by the terrible fear effect, the boss stays completely still, unable to react, while Pluto calmly advances with his bone bombs. The boy speaks with disdain right in the immobilized giant's face, comparing him to mere defenseless ingredients positioned on his cutting board. Pluto finishes by saying in a cold and sadistic tone that he is the only cook in that dungeon, while ordering his explosive servants to surround the monster. He cracks a slight gloomy smile upon noticing that the opponent is completely cornered and without any chance of escaping the dozens of prepared bombs. The young necromancer dryly orders the start of the feast, and his explosive skeletons jump with everything on top of the colossal goblin's immobilized body. Successive and violent explosions burst on the giant monster's body, generating an immense column of fire and smoke that consumes the entire rift combat area. Through the dense black smoke, it is possible to see the boss completely burned and defeated, staggering weakly after suffering the damage of the continuous explosions. With a quick flow, the colossal goblin collapses lifeless onto the dungeon floor, earning the young necromancer over 12,000 quick experience points. Pluto is intrigued by defeating the big boss so easily, honestly admitting that he expected a long and tiring war of attrition against him. He checks his status at level 11 and realizes with disappointment that the experience points received were not even enough to level up now. The boy starts walking through the destroyed dungeon and comments to himself in a distrustful tone that something strange seems to be out of place there. The system confirms the elimination of the monster, but Pluto finds it strange because all previous dungeons he cleared displayed an immediate completion notice. The fact that the system doesn't close the rift makes the young necromancer conclude that the survival mission proposed by the guild hasn't actually come to an end. Yet, he widens his eyes upon realizing the hidden truth, immediately understanding that that dungeon actually has multiple dangerous bosses to beat. The boy recalls his theoretical studies which say that in special dungeons with multiple bosses, all leaders must be defeated for escape. Aware of the new objective, Pluto advances through the dark tunnel accompanied by his undead troops, knowing that there is another strong opponent hidden in the back. As they progress through the cave, his skeletal warriors encounter new groups of enemies, starting another round of bizarre and violent combats. Pluto observes the large number of adversaries in the way and calmly comments that the rift is stuffed with elite opponents for him to hunt. Without showing any hesitation, the young man gives the attack order, and his bone servants advance, tearing through the goblins' defenses with their sharp swords. The boy celebrates upon seeing that the number of elites is increasing rapidly, concluding with satisfaction that they are very close to the true final stage. Suddenly, an absurdly loud and scary roar echoes from the darkness of the rift, making the entire cave shake with the force of that savage scream. With a focused look, Pluto focuses his attention on the end of the tunnel, concluding that those deafening screams can only belong to the true final boss. Pluto realizes that the goblins defeated at the entrance were just the tip of the iceberg upon spotting several colossal monster silhouettes emerging in the rift. 3 colossal goblins with glowing eyes and sharp teeth emerge roaring loudly in front of the young necromancer in a clear display of fury and power. One of the gigantic monsters stares at the boy with quite a bit of surprise and doubt, seeming not to understand how a mere human managed to get that far there. The big goblin drools with anger upon noticing the invader's presence and stammers in a threatening tone, proving to be a thinking and quite aggressive beast. Pluto turns serious and concludes with surprise that, contrary to what he thought, the difficult dungeon actually has 3 gigantic bosses in total in the cave. To make matters worse, the bosses come accompanied by at least 100 lesser servants who run noisily and hungrily to start the terrible battle. The boy checks his energy points and realizes with concern that using his smoke technique consumed half of his mana, leaving little for combat. With a deafening scream, one of the boss goblins ruthlessly orders its servants to attack and kill the young invader without any mercy. The gigantic creature takes heavy steps across the packed dirt floor, yelling cruel orders for its allies to devour Pluto alive right there in the cave. Knowing he cannot hesitate, Pluto wields his scythe with determination and orders an immediate attack by his skeleton troops against the adversaries. The three gigantic leaders run furiously into the clash, wielding their heavy clubs and ignoring the small bone warriors in the way. One of the monsters raises its huge stone hammer above its head, dealing a violent attack against the horde of undead summoned by the boy. The crushing blow destroys dozens of skeletal soldiers all at once, scattering dust and broken bones all over that dark cave. The surviving skeletons try to fight back heroically, dealing quick thrusts with their spears and swords against the army's lesser goblins. A violent explosion opens a deep crater in the destroyed ground, burying several warriors while the colossal leaders advance relentlessly in the fight. Pluto notices that because they are extremely cruel and bloodthirsty, the lesser monsters begin to beat each other up and fight amongst themselves in the middle of the panic. The boy realizes that the physical strength difference is way too colossal, so his ordinary skeletons cannot even get close to the three bosses. He calculates that his remaining energy won't last until he defeats the three leaders, but remembers that leveling up recovers 30% of his magic points. With his look focused on combat, Pluto concludes that if his mana runs out completely before he manages to evolve, his final destination will be certain death right there. Finding no other viable option, he decides to risk all his chips in a single drastic move, channeling an immense amount of purple power. The chains of dark energy begin to envelop the gigantic goblins, scaring the army of little monsters with that pressure of pure black magic. Pluto confidently says that the time has come for his elite warrior to shine and conjures a dense spiritual mist to bring his strongest soldier. Archer reemerges imposing manner, wearing his dark combat suit and wielding the beautiful blue bow, ready to shoot against the enemy forces. The boy gives the focused attack order, and his mana begins to decrease continuously with each new magic energy shot performed by his ally. He orders to focus on the monster on the left first, and Archer's accurate shot pierces the giant's head, scattering blood and opening an opening for the bombs. Pluto immediately orders the conversion, and his warriors jump, exploding in violent yellow flames over the injured body of the first goblin boss. A spectacular explosion consumes the colossal enemy, generating intense flames that light up the dark rock walls of that destroyed dungeon. Swallowed by the devastating fire of the gunpowder bombs, the monster screams in pain and staggers without any strength under the continuous bursts of Pluto's technique. The first giant boss finally falls dead on the destroyed ground, earning the young Necromancer another 12,500 bonus experience points. Pluto smiles enthusiastically upon noticing that his progress bar reached 98%, concluding that he only needs to defeat one more leader. Knowing that Archer's arrows consume his scarce mana, Pluto tells him to take down the second leader, while his magic energy drops close to zero limit. Pluto's mana bar runs out completely, zeroing his magic forces, and making the young man fall to his knees with no energy on the dungeon floor. With eyes widen in terror, he realizes that sudden lack of energy means he is completely vulnerable to any attack there. The second goblin boss takes advantage of the boy's weakness and raises its huge club with hatred, dealing a fatal blow to crush Pluto on the floor. The gigantic metal club comes down at high speed, cutting through the air and generating an immense gust of wind that is about to collide against the young man. With a desperate scream, Pluto calls for Archer, who promptly stretches the string of his mystic bow, channeling one last powerful energy shot. The elite sniper fires a gigantic and fast blue light arrow that cuts through the cave air toward the head of the attacking colossal monster. The projectile hits the monster's skull dead, on with a dry noise, opening a devastating hole and scattering a lot of blood across the dark rocks around. The second boss collapses lifeless onto the floor and yields the necessary experience for Pluto, who celebrates in thought upon seeing the gigantic creature fall, dead. An explosion of golden light surrounds the boy, indicating that he successfully leveled up to level 12, instantly recovering part of his powers. But with no time to rest, the third and last goblin boss leaps at him, dealing a brutal hammer blow that breaks the stone floor. The impact of the destructive attack is frighteningly strong, generating an immense cloud of dirt and broken rocks. Right where the young necromancer was standing, Pluto moves quickly and thinks in relief that, if he had delayed one more second, he wouldn't have been able to activate his incorporeal form with the recovered mana. The giant monster hits the floor with anger and looks around confused upon realizing that his crushing blow apparently didn't hit the intruder at all. Pluto floats in the air in his mystic form and celebrates, saying that this is his lucky day for having managed to activate his escape spell in time for the blow. He materializes back, displaying a reasonable amount of magic energy in his status, and opens a side smile, ready to counterattack the rival. The young man exclaims with determination that now it is his turn to fight and activates his death gaze technique, making the huge floating red eye appear again. Under the terrible effect of mental paralysis, the last goblin boss becomes completely static and starts to break out in a cold sweat of terror before the immense magic aura. Pluto approaches with calm steps toward the immobilized beast and coldly orders Archer to shoot to pierce the opponent's head without giving any defense chances. The elite sniper pulls the string of his luminous energy bow and responds respectfully that he will fulfill his master's order immediately. The fast blue arrow pierces the skull of the last boss, defeating it on the spot and yielding Pluto another 12,500 bonus experience points. Pluto thinks that with a full charge, the sniper can defeat a monster of the same level on extreme difficulty, and is impressed that his power is so high. He concludes that his evolved servants are absurdly superior both to their normal forms and to the dungeon's own elite beasts. Pluto knows that his remaining 4 evolution slots must be chosen with extreme caution so that he can build the strongest army of all. Pluto's skill system displays a new notification, clearly confirming that he still has exactly 4 slots to evolve. In the distance, the lesser goblins start to tremble and waver with fear before the intimidating and scary presence of that mysterious necromancer boy. Pluto finds it funny to see monsters feel terror, but warns that he will show no mercy since all of them will serve only as fuel for his own evolution. With a command shout, the boy orders his skeletal warriors to advance for real to massacre the survivors trying to flee desperately. Archer stretches the string of his glowing blue bow again, ready to fire a lethal shot and destroy any enemy still standing. But with a gentle touch on the servant's shoulder, Pluto orders Archer to rest and let the ordinary skeletons handle the lesser enemies in a simple way. The young man recognizes that the magic arrows carried by Archer cause monstrous damage, but charge a high price by consuming his mana points too much. He reflects that if more servants evolve, the energy expenditure will be shared, so that the mana recovered by leveling up won't sustain his army. Pluto defines as his top priority from that moment on finding some viable way to drastically increase his magic energy limits. His subordinates eliminate the last elite goblin of the dungeon, securing another 1,000 quick experience points for the young necromancer's evolution. The system confirms success in the challenge, and Pluto remembers that clearing the place unlocks rewards from all the dozens of enemies eliminated in the dungeon. An immense column of blue light shines in the place, and the young man celebrates cheerfully, announcing that the long-awaited moment to reap the rewards has finally arrived. Outside the cave, 2 injured adventurers complain that level 9 extreme difficulty almost ended their lives even though they are level 13. One of them looks curiously at the dungeon entrance and wonders, intrigued, what might have happened to that mysterious student who went in there alone. The partner laughs and says the guy must have snuck away or died in there, since trying to solo the extreme level would be a complete act of madness. Suddenly, a gigantic bell installed at the top of the cave starts ringing 3 times in a row, catching the frightened attention of all the heroes in the region. They explain in surprise that the bell sound indicates a record was broken, and 3 rings in a row mean a world record was destroyed. The older adventurer widens his eyes in complete shock, unable to comprehend the possibility of seeing a world record being broken that day. They run toward the entrance to try to figure out which famous guild that victorious elite team that accomplished this historical feat belongs to. The panel reveals that Plu cleared the cave alone on extreme difficulty for the first time in history, leaving the local crowd in complete shock. The place gets packed with curious people pushing each other to try to get an autograph from the hero whom everyone imagines to be a genius warrior or mage. The portal glows intensely, indicating that the conqueror is coming out, and the crowd shouts excitedly, celebrating the arrival of the dungeon's new living legend. Pluto exits the portal, grumbling in frustration for having had the bad luck of receiving only warrior and tank items that are useless for mages or snipers. The reward panel displays dozens of glowing swords, shields, and heavy armor, confirming Pluto's terrible luck with the dungeon prizes. The boy stops walking for an instant and raises his head curiously upon noticing a sudden and very strange silence coming from the crowd around him. He comes face to face with dozens of adventurers standing still, staring at him with expressions of complete astonishment and dropped jaws, without anyone being able to say a word. Pluto feels the tense atmosphere and gets quite uncomfortable, wiping the sweat from his face while wondering confusedly what is happening to those people. Right after that, the crowd starts whispering agitatedly, generating a deafening buzz of surprise that spreads all over the outdoor area of the cave. They shout in surprise upon realizing that the legendary world record conqueror is actually just that young student with a goofy boy appearance. The warriors complain in disappointment because they expected to see a muscular colossus or a marvelous mage, and not a skinny boy with such a fragile appearance. Pluto hears the bizarre comments about muscular giants and beautiful mages and gets annoyed, not understanding what all those crazy people are stammering about. But most of the heroes ignore the physical details and start surrounding the young man in every way. Amazed by the incredible feat of breaking the record, several people extend their cell phones asking for contacts, offering spots in famous guilds, and begging Pluto to take them to difficult dungeons. Suffocated by the irritating tumult, Pluto hurriedly pushes people away, complaining about the excessive noise and trying by all means to find a quiet place. The boy hurries away, grumbling that it was just an ordinary dungeon and wondering why they stare at him as if he were an exotic alien. He finally manages to shake off the horde of noisy fans and stops in an isolated corner to catch his breath after the tiring escape from that crowd. Pluto grabs his cracked cell phone and decides to call Crowley to announce that he successfully completed the difficult evaluation mission proposed by the Grand Guild. At the Azure Dragon headquarters, Crowley talks to the president, arguing that demanding the boy solo an extreme level 15 dungeon is an absurdity. The elder warns that if something goes wrong and they end up losing the boy, the consequences will be truly catastrophic for the entire country. Sitting at his office desk, President Victor lets out a long sigh and asks in a serious tone what the old counselor would like to suggest then. Crowley suggests that they allow Pluto to take at least one healer as support for the dungeon, ensuring his physical safety in case of any accident. The elder seriously points out that losing a promising genius with Pluto's potential because of a mere military test would be a huge and tragic loss. Victor reluctantly agrees and decides to grant special permission for the boy to take a single healer as a partner, but forbids any other help. The counselor nods, confirming that he understood the president's decision, and gets ready to contact the young necromancer as quickly as possible. Walking away, Crowley thinks worriedly that Pluto is way too hasty and will probably try to raid the dungeon without any kind of prior preparation. The elder grabs his state of the art cell phone and hurriedly dials Pluto's number, mentally praying that the boy answers the call soon. His eyes narrow with apprehension and anxiety while he waits for the call signal, praying to manage to prevent Pluto from committing some foolishness. Crowley asks on the phone if Pluto had any trouble in the rift, but tells him not to worry because he got permission for him to take a support item. Pluto stammers awkwardly on the phone and reveals to the old counselor that he actually only called to let him know that the test is already finished. Elder Crowley's eyes widen, and he lets out a shout of complete surprise upon unexpectedly hearing that bizarre statement from the young man. In the office room, President Victor lowers his reports and asks curiously what could be so shocking that it made Crowley act like that. Stammering from shock, Crowley reveals to the leader that Pluto just soloed the dungeon on extreme difficulty and set a new world record. Victor stands up from his chair with a huge, surprised smile on his face, wanting to immediately confirm if that fantastic news was real. Excited about the result, the president demands that the elder hand over the device so that he can talk to the young necromancer himself and congratulate him. Crowley hands the cell phone to the president while Pluto keeps waiting on the line, not quite understanding what is happening on the other end. Victor takes over the call and asks directly if the kid really managed to easily pass his difficult evaluation test in the dungeon. Pluto is surprised to hear the voice of the guild leader, but quickly confirms in a polite manner that the extreme challenge proposed was indeed completed. Victor breaks into a wide smile of satisfaction, praising the young man's achievement and commenting proudly that he expected nothing less from the young man he chose himself. The guild president says that they now have matters of extreme importance to discuss and demands that the meeting take place in person. Pluto walks down the dungeon stairs and asks calmly if he should go immediately to the luxurious Azure Dragon headquarters for the secret meeting. Victor says there is no need to go to headquarters because he has already chosen a much more suitable location and time for their private conversation. He schedules the meeting at one of the most expensive restaurants in the country, where only billionaires and elite adventurers can afford to hang out at night. Pluto arrives early at the luxurious traditional restaurant and wonders somewhat awkwardly whether he should go in alone or wait for the guild leaders to arrive. He bites his lips, remembering that since he hasn't sold his rift prizes yet, he only has a measly 10 gold coins kept in his suit pocket. Trying to calm down, Pluto takes a deep breath and thinks that if he doesn't fear assassin monsters from rifts, there's no reason to be afraid of an expensive restaurant. He decides to act naturally and starts walking firmly toward the beautifully decorated entrance of that elite establishment in Aurora. The receptionist greets him politely, wanting to know if he has a reservation, and Pluto confirms timidly that he is booked for VIP room 1. The young woman is surprised, knowing that room 1 is exclusive, and asks the kid to display his status screen to carry out the rigorous data check. Pluto activates his system, showing his complete level 12 Necromancer identity, so the receptionist can do the mandatory validation. After checking the data on the magical screen, she confirms the validation and invites the kid to enter very politely and with a respectful gesture. The receptionist is amazed, thinking that room 1 is only for authorities of the country, and realizes the young man has a personal invitation from the president. She watches the young man walk away with curiosity, wondering to herself who that mysterious kid in a suit named Pluto really was. A waiter in a suit greets him in the hallway and announces that President Victor left clear instructions to guide him, asking Pluto to accompany him. Pluto starts following the waiter through the luxurious, decorated dining hall, observing the expensive tables and the elegant, silent atmosphere of that restaurant. At one of the nearby tables, young Master Adrian Blackwood is sitting comfortably, savoring a very juicy and expensive beef steak. Adrian complains mentally that the assassin Cedric still hasn't given any news, deducing irritably that the hunter failed in the mission to assassinate his rival. He tries to calm down, remembering that his brother will take care of everything soon, and decides to savor his luxurious banquet that Pluto would never have the money to eat. At that moment, Pluto passes right by his table, and the young master hears the sound of the guy's footsteps. Lifting his head with boredom to see who it was, Adrian goes into complete shock and drops his food from his mouth upon coming face to face with Pluto, who is alive and walking calmly through the elite hall. He quickly recovers his swagger and thinks with hatred that even if he can't keep up with the rival's level, he will humiliate him right there, using his financial power. The young man slams his hand hard on the table, making noise to grab everyone's attention in the hall, and tries to start a new scene of humiliation against Pluto. Adrian starts mocking loudly, asking where Pluto got the money to frequent such a luxurious place when he's just a miserable, poor orphan. The waiter asks if there is a problem while Pluto sighs with boredom, thinking that this guy from his school is truly an unbearable plague. Adrian continues with the insults, saying with contempt that the place requires thousands of gold coins just to reserve an ordinary table in the main hall. The waiter immediately reprimands Master Adrian, demanding respect, and reveals in a harsh tone that Pluto is actually a very important special guest. Adrian is totally speechless at the response and swallows hard, unable to understand how his rival became such a valuable guest there. The young man soon starts laughing hysterically, telling the waiter to stop fooling around, because Pluto is just an orphan with no family from the city's slums. He states mockingly that Pluto is at most a lowly test candidate and questions if the kid already thinks he's some important member of the guild. Tired of the stupid provocations, Pluto suddenly activates his immense dark energy, making a dense mist of purple power surge around his body. Adrian backs away scared, shouting that combat in the restaurant is forbidden and reminding everyone that rule violators are hunted down relentlessly by the 5 great guilds. The restaurant manager panics, fearing he will lose his managerial position if a fight breaks out there, and begs desperately for Pluto to calm down. Amidst the magical flames, Pluto ignores the manager's pleas and asks coldly why he should have patience with that cowardly guy. The employee sweats cold with despair upon noticing that combat is inevitable, lamenting in his thoughts that his prestigious job is about to end. With a sarcastic smile, the kid says he was like to show something interesting to his former, arrogant schoolmate. Pluto pulls out Cedric's bow and asks in a mocking tone if Adrian by any chance doesn't recognize the former owner of that powerful, glowing blue elite weapon. Adrian instantly recognizes Cedric's mystic bow and widens his eyes in complete terror upon spotting the silhouette of the skeleton archer behind Pluto. Pluto smiles coldly and warns that the owner of the bow is already dead by his own hands, challenging Adrian to bring any new dirty trick against him. Adrian is totally paralyzed with terror upon realizing that the feared assassin Cedric was defeated and killed by Pluto's own hands. The young necromancer just closes his hand with a firm gesture, dissipating the last currents of blue magical power that were floating in the hall. Next, he tells the waiter that they can now take him to the private meeting room, and the employee agrees, guiding him immediately. Adrian clenches his teeth in pure anger for losing in status and wealth, not understanding how a mere C rank managed to defeat Cedric, who was level 18. Consumed by fury, he screams Pluto's name out loud behind the rival's back, refusing to be surpassed in such a humiliating way. Pluto just turns his face sideways, looking back with a cold and totally unshackable expression in the face of his classmates' desperate screams. Adrian screams out of control, warning that the Azure Dragon Guild is not the only force in the country, and that hiding behind it won't save him from revenge. Suddenly, a huge armored hand grips Adrian's shoulder from behind, and a deep, intimidating voice asks him if he is mocking the guild. Startled, the young man turns around quickly, wanting to know who dared touch him, and comes face to face with a huge and scary metal weapon pointed right at him. Adrian tries to unleash a furious blow against the man, screaming indignantly that no one should touch him while he was speaking in the hall, but his violent attack is blocked with extreme ease by a holy knight's shield, generating a loud metallic collision noise. The young man steps back trembling and sweating cold upon noticing that his lightning-fast strike was stopped so simply by a mere bronze, armored warrior. Elder Crowley emerges behind the guard with a shining look and formally accuses him of slandering the guild and assaulting the vice president in public. Adrian drops his weapon in panic and starts running and begging for forgiveness, stammering that he had no idea it was Crowley there. With his eyes glowing in blue flames, Elder Crowley states irritably that any ordinary person would have been hurt and promises to teach the young man a lesson. Adrian begs on his knees, screaming proclaiming that the place has strict rules against combat and that not even the guild vice president can break them. Crowley just glances sideways at the man next to him and asks with a sarcastic smile about the combat rules mentioned by the kid. President Victor Langley takes an imposing step forward and declares with maximum authority that he himself is the only valid rule in that place. Adrian Blackwood bites his lips and widens his eyes in terror upon sensing the overwhelming and terrifying presence of the most powerful man in the region. Victor unleashes a lightning, fast fist strike bathed in golden lightning that travels at absurd speed toward the frightened young master's chest. The impact of the devastating punch is so violent that Adrian is thrown backward, smashing tables and flying out of control through the restaurant hall. With a deafening crash of broken glass, the young man bursts through the large restaurant window and falls straight onto the busy street sidewalk. Victor points his finger and warns severely that Pluto is a special guest of the guild, and that any trash that tries to disturb him will suffer the same fate on the street. Pedestrians watch in astonishment as Adrian's body plummets from the top of the building, commenting in shock that someone was just thrown out of the hall. The young man lies abandoned on the sidewalk, unconscious and drooling white smoke from pain, while people scream in fright asking for a fast ambulance for him. The witnesses look up at the top of the building and spot President Victor Langley and Elder Aaron Crowley coldly watching the fall from the window. They gossip in astonishment upon realizing that the student in the black suit is actually the guild president's highly valuable special guest. Inside the destroyed hall, Pluto watches in silence the immense brutality displayed by the Azure Dragon leaders. Keeping his calm expression, the local manager appears, bowing deeply, and welcomes the two most influential leaders in the country with extreme respect and honor. Victor warns that they will make their way to private room, one on their own, and tells the manager to quickly clean up all that mess made in the hall. Manager Jones bows again and asks the leaders not to worry, guaranteeing that he will personally take care of cleaning up all the dirt and damage. Jones orders the staff to evacuate the crowd, clean up the scene quickly, and send the injured kid straight to Aurora's hospital right away. While walking, Victor praises the young Necromancer's spectacular feat for having soloed the extreme Doomsday dungeon with such ease and speed. He notes in amazement that Pluto came out of the dungeon without suffering a single scratch, keeping his clothes clean and his expression completely rested. Elder Crowley smiles amicably and suggests they hurry to the private room because the ordered luxurious banquet must already be getting cold. Pluto follows the two leaders in silence, thinking with surprise that this Elder Crowley of such calm appearance turned out to have a truly savage side. Crowley praises Pluto's brilliant performance in the extreme dungeon, commenting that he and President Victor had total certainty about the kid's talent. Pluto explains that the combat almost caused his death and that he only survived thanks to the timely level evolution that recovered his depleted mana at the end. The group finally reaches the entrance of luxurious room number 1, where the heavy decorated wooden gates are about to open for the banquet. Crowley tells him to relax, guaranteeing that in a few moments his magical energy will overflow again, leaving the young necromancer quite confused. The door opens, revealing a gigantic round table crammed with the most exquisite and expensive food dishes Pluto has ever seen in his entire life. The kid is amazed by the luxurious presentation of the food, concluding that the sophistication of that hall screams wealth and elite refinement. The white, bearded elder gently places his hand on Pluto's shoulder and invites him in a friendly manner to choose any of the seats at the large table. Victor takes his seat and tells Pluto to help himself without any shyness in front of that bountiful table of delicious and juicy dishes. Crowley says he had special support foods prepared after learning that Pluto's energy was drained, leaving the kid curious about the effect. He explains that support dishes are prepared by professional cooks and grant incredible mana, agility, and strength bonuses to warriors. Pluto imagines the effect of eating one of those rare dishes that seem capable of increasing any hero's physical attributes immediately. The kid understands the explanation and focuses his eyes on the rare foods, realizing the immense value of each delicacy positioned on the luxurious table. Crowley hands a piece of mystic blue meat fillet to Pluto, guaranteeing that the food will drastically increase his magical recovery speed. Pluto consumes the food and feels his magical energy overflow violently with an absurd bonus of 200% regeneration for 1 hour. Crowley explains proudly that the bonuses granted by those rare dishes are temporary, but guarantee an absurd attribute increase. The elder hands out another special delicacy called explosive red pepper, warning the young man that the food will greatly increase his strength power. He continues, pointing to several other rare dishes that increase agility, give defense bonuses, and brutally accelerate physical regeneration. Pluto starts devouring everything with great eagerness, stuffing his cheeks with the special delicacies, without worrying about keeping his elegance in the place. Satisfied and full-bellied, Pluto feels the status bonuses activate all at once and comments laughing that he feels like a true superhuman. President Victor Langley wipes his mouth with a cloth napkin and warns seriously that now that the kid is fed, it's time for business. Victor congratulates Pluto on the flawless result in the difficult dungeon and announces that from now on, the young man is officially a hero of his guild. But he warns that since Pluto's case is unique, his entry will be kept in absolute secrecy, preventing him from displaying his magical skills on the street. With a focused and composed look, the young necromancer nods positively, confirming that he understands the need to keep the secret. Victor Langley rests his chin on his hand and asks in a mysterious tone if the kid really knows who their true and most dangerous enemies are. Pluto responds that according to his knowledge, neighboring nations have always demonstrated a hostile and dangerous rivalry against his own country. Victor confirms that these countries are severe threats because they infiltrate stealthy assassins across their borders to eliminate promising heroes of the nation. Crowley adds that this dangerous rivalry is the reason for them to conceal the one-man army power that Pluto possesses to avoid attacks. The elder says enemies would try to eliminate him at any cost, while Pluto clenches his fist, indignant at the world's human greed and wars. Crowley notices with fright a dense dark energy surging around the kid, being the first time he feels such strong murderous intent from Pluto. He tries to break the tense mood by commenting that although rivalries between human nations are dangerous, they do not represent the worst of threats. The young man is surprised by that statement and asks intrigued if there really is any force in this world more dangerous than rival countries. Victor leans on the large dark wood table and asks with a composed expression if the kid is ready to discover the truth of this world. Pluto stares at the guild president very attentively, waiting anxiously to hear the big, scary revelation that the leader is about to tell. Victor Langley stands up under the window light and reveals in a gloomy way that in the eyes of a certain race, this world is nothing more than a big hunting ground. The kid is extremely horrified by the dark revelation and stammers, without understanding the true meaning of the leader's macabre words. The president clearly explains that there are two-dimensional rifts in this world, one of them being the Blessing Rift, and the other called the Calamity Rift. Pluto widens his eyes in curiosity and immediately asks what the big and dangerous power level difference existing between these two portals would be. Victor extends the 3 fingers of his hand and starts listing slowly the 3 main force distinctions that set Calamity Rifts apart. He explains that blessing portals manifest only through the use of special keys, appearing in the exact location chosen by the adventurer. On the other hand, Calamity Rifts appear completely at random, being able to open in dense forests, mountains, or populated cities. He details that the level of monsters in Blessing Rifts adapts to the adventurer's strength, preventing unfair combat inside the divine dungeon, but in Calamity Rifts, the level and quantity of beasts are chaotic, and at the same strength tier, they are immensely superior in damage. The young man concludes in fright that the demonic beasts of Calamity Rifts are absurdly superior to the normal monsters he faced before. Victor points his index finger firmly and announces that the third and most dangerous difference between the rifts is directly linked to their flow. He points out that heroes can choose whether they want to enter ordinary dungeons, but the beasts inside will never manage to cross the portal to Earth. However, the evil beasts of Calamity Rifts have the terrible ability to cross the portals and freely invade human cities. Pluto panics upon realizing that just like heroes enter dungeons, monsters can also use the portals to invade the world. Victor confirms seriously that for this reason, the human world is viewed by monster hordes as a huge hunting territory ready for harvesting. Pluto sweats cold upon realizing that compared to the disputes of neighboring countries, these chaotic calamity portals are the biggest and real current threat. Victor agrees, but reveals mysteriously that the small random portals are not the worst part, because the true nightmare lies in another event. He shares that every 10 years, a colossal rift over 1 kilometer high opens in some country, attracting hundreds of small chaos portals. In this event, the terrible Demon King leads the hordes to massacre humanity, forcing the affected nation to fight to the death in brutal rift combats. With a gloomy look and intensely glowing eyes, the guild president reveals impactfully that the next great war will begin in 1 year. Pluto is startled by such a short deadline and asks indignantly why he never read about such a devastating and striking war in history books. Crowley explains that rift wars are terrible nightmares for the population, and countries hide the truth to prevent panic from taking over everyone. The young man lowers his head thoughtfully and questions, with a focused look, whether the next great battleground of that rift war will be his country. The faces of Crowley and Victor Langley are shown in close-up, revealing expressions of extreme shock and total surprise in the face of the guy's shrewdness. Victor Langley rests his hands on the table and asks with a completely intrigued expression how a mere student managed to discover that national secret. Pluto explains calmly that he could easily read the terrible affliction and silent anguish that the two leaders carry hidden deep in their bones. The guild president's gaze narrows even further, focused on Pluto in a composed and very attentive manner upon noticing the kid's intelligence level. Victor praises the young man's great perception, confessing that he believed he was hiding his feelings well, but admits that the student in the suit read his mind, staring fixedly at the reflection of his cup. Pluto thinks to himself that actually, he just knows that terrible feeling of panic very well. He recalls his past life on Earth armed with his military rifle, and remembers the terrible anguish of trying to stay calm while his body shakes with fear. Pluto soon realizes he thought out loud and stammers, trying to disguise his slip of the tongue, praying the leaders didn't hear. Pluto explains that he actually deduced the location of the battlefield from their facial features and questions how they knew about everything in advance. Crowley shares that there is a totally neutral international guild called the Oculus Guild that recruits prophets from all over the world and sells their visions. The elder continues his explanation with a focused tone, revealing that this organization profits high by commercializing future predictions. He reveals that the Oculus Guild manages to predict the exact location of the colossal rift 2 years in advance, facilitating preparation for the war. Pluto ponders if the country is swallowed by war, what would prevent rival nations C and Z from attacking them, taking advantage that they are vulnerable in the chaos. Crowley says there is an iron rule that forbids any nation from attacking the host country for 5 years under penalty of becoming an enemy of all humanity. Pluto understands the reason the tension with Nation Z suddenly vanished, since everyone is focused and preparing in silence for the great catastrophe. Victor adds that even without the law, wars decrease because of the resources countries need to dedicate entirely to rift dangers. The young man asks if any team has ever tried to cross the calamity portals to invade and destroy the native world of those beasts themselves. Victor Langley keeps his gaze totally fixed and silent before the kid, demonstrating with his silence that that question touched a dangerous point. Crowley screams in despair for the young man not to even consider entering the colossal rift, warning that just repelling the Demon King almost destroys the country's strength. The elder shares horrified that in in the last war, Azure Dragon lost 70% of its elite forces, almost disbanding for good with the tragedy. Pluto is shocked and admits to himself in a solemn tone that he was too naive in underestimating the terrible power scale of that destructive event. But with eyes shining intensely in gold, the president states that that is in the past, because with Pluto's abilities, everything will change. Victor clenches his fist with energy, guaranteeing that the kid's limitless army will duplicate efficiency in the future war, requiring only half the effort. He states proudly that with the young man's surreal summoning power, he alone will be able to completely rewrite the final destiny of the entire nation. Victor promises to give unreserved support to Pluto throughout the next year, preparing to place the guild's maximum resources at his disposal. The president turns to Crowley and orders firmly that he immediately bring the special welcome gifts prepared for the kid. The elder slams a heavy black briefcase onto the meeting table, generating a dull noise that leaves the young necromancer intrigued by the contents. Pluto asks what's inside the briefcase, and Crowley invites him with a calm smile to open and check the special rewards sent by the guild. The young man opens the briefcase with a quick click, and his eyes shine with astonishment upon coming face to face with luxurious items of jewelry, gold keys, and rare crystals. Pluto asks in amazement if all those rare treasures are his, and the elder picks up the beautiful golden necklace called Phoenix Eye to explain the effect. Crowley reveals that the necklace is a legendary level 1 treasure that belonged to the president and allows instant teleportation for whoever is wearing it. The mystic necklace has the status of an extremely rare level 1 legendary item with a long range transport effect and a 72-hour cooldown. The elder shares that legendary items usually require high levels, and that level 1 Phoenix necklace is an absolute rarity all over the world. Pluto is fascinated upon realizing he holds in his hands a legendary item capable of performing teleportation without distance limits right at the start of his journey. Victor adds that the necklace is a rare mystic jewel sent by the Phoenix Guild to allow emergency meetings of the 5 leaders against global dangers. The kid accepts the necklace, but asks worriedly how the president will hold his emergency meetings if he is donating his own legendary treasure. Victor smiles with his arms crossed, revealing that as the strongest of the 5, he received 2 copies of the necklace, displaying the other jewel on his neck. He explains that for security, Pluto's necklace is linked only to his, guaranteeing that only Victor himself will be able to transport himself to the kid. Pluto concludes with satisfaction that he has the strongest hero as his personal bodyguard, but decides to keep the necklace with care due to the long cooldown. Crowley presents the second prize, revealing it to be a level 1 legendary ring that belonged to him in his youth and will grant great mana bonuses. The Moonlight Ring of legendary quality grants an extra 100 points of maximum mana bonus and doubles spell effectiveness under the effect of the full moon. The young man puts the beautiful ring on his finger with eager anticipation, anxious to test the increase of mana and energy in his body during everyday battles. Instantly, Pluto's body glows wrapped in purple flames while his maximum mana takes an absurd leap, rising to 250 points. Crowley comments that spellcasting classes require a lot of magical energy, and Pluto agrees radiantly that the mana and full moon bonus is perfect for him. The elder gets very serious with a green, ghostly image behind his back and demands that Pluto take good care of the ring, because he will be furious if he loses it. With an awkward smile, Pluto immediately guarantees that he will protect Crowley's valuable legendary ring with his own life while he is breathing. Crowley presents the golden blessing keys, and Pluto is excited to finally recognize the items, planning to use them soon to grind levels. However, the kid gets startled and confused when the elder pulls the 3 golden keys back into his hands with a quick and serious gesture. Crowley explains seriously that blessing keys are extremely rare treasures, and Azure Dragon only has 9 of them, forbidding Pluto from wasting them on a whim. Pluto asks when he should use them, and Crowley responds that high-level monsters in Blessing Rifts give massive experience bonuses and great drop rates. He returns the keys and instructs the kid to use them only when reaching a difficult evolution limit to maximize the yield of rare prizes. The young man agrees, and since he wants to evolve fast to face dangers, asks if the leaders have any other good training location suggestions. Elder Crowley smiles out of the corner of his mouth, revealing that he and President Victor have already chosen the perfect scenery for Pluto to grind levels in absolute safety. The Great Apex Dungeon Temple is revealed, a colossal facility built jointly by the 5 largest and most prestigious guilds. Pluto remembers hearing about Apex for having the widest variety of challenges, the highest levels, and the best drop rewards in the entire country. He gets a huge smile of anxiety on his face, wanting to know immediately how he should travel to the famous Apex facilities today. Crowley extends a glowing golden crystal, explaining that jewel allows immediate teleportation to any active Apex temple in the country. Victor Langley instructs him to go to Temple 3, geared toward novices of major guilds whose level 10 to 25 dungeons are ideal for him. Pluto celebrates, stating that he is in perfect physical condition and saying he is extremely anxious to raid the difficult dungeons offered by the temple. Victor Langley stares at him very seriously and recommends that the young man be extra careful as soon as he sets foot in that dangerous dungeon. Pluto gives a confident, light smile, stating he well knows that Apex dungeons are much worse than ordinary ones and guarantees he will be cautious. The guild president warns that he must take extreme care not only with the beasts, but also with the other arrogant heroes who frequent the temple. Victor explains that the heroes there are the greatest elite geniuses in the entire country and suggests that Pluto avoid getting involved in real combats against them. He admits proudly that none of them would have any chance against Pluto's summons and asks this earnestly as a personal leader favor. Pluto gives an awkward laugh and guarantees right away that he will try in every way to avoid unnecessary confrontations against these other heroes. Crowley adds that if a fight is inevitable, Pluto should just show the golden crystal to silence the novices with the guild's prestige. Victor concludes that with matters resolved and gifts delivered, the young man should start his level training and keep in touch via the Phoenix necklace, holding the rare jewels. The kid memorizes the names of the received treasures, such as the lunar ring, the gold keys, and the mystic teleport crystal. Pluto bids farewell to the 2 elders very seriously, swearing firmly that he will not disappoint the guild that trusted his potential so much. An immense pillar of blue mystic light explodes on the restaurant ceiling, signaling that Pluto's instant teleportation process has been successfully activated. A strong gust of wind spreads across the large banquet table, while the kid's blue energy completely disappears from the reserved hall. Crowley and Victor Langley watch in silence the empty spot where Pluto was moments ago, while the mana smoke slowly dissipates in the air. Crowley admits with a slight smile on his face that he can barely contain his anxiety to see Pluto's growth level at their next reunion. The president agrees, but reminds him with a cold look that before that, they urgently need to clean up all the dirt and threats from the kid's path. The white, bearded elder widens his eyes and questions if the leader is referring to the stealthy assassination attempt planned against Pluto's life. Victor Langley confirms seriously and reveals that the guild's intelligence division has successfully discovered who the real mastermind behind that attack was. He reveals with hatred in his eyes that the culprit behind all that setup against Pluto is precisely the spoiled kid he just threw far away. Crowley understands the president's fury and comments that if they hadn't been in public, the impact of that lightning fast punch would have shattered the young man's skull. The counselor warns that since it's about Pluto's safety, they cannot make mistakes, and asks if Adrian's record has already been investigated. Victor Langley responds that Adrian is just a spoiled rich kid whose businessman father is weak, but warns that there is a single and dangerous exception in his family. The president reveals that the young man has a very talented older brother who acts as an elite captain in the famous White Tiger Guild. Crowley says the captain himself is not a problem, but warns that the White Tiger president is impatient and that a fight would escalate into a guild war. Victor Langley says Pluto is the country's future and guarantees that even if the rival guild president showed up, he wouldn't stop eliminating this threat. Crowley observes Victor Langley's focused and furious expression and asks calmly what the leader intends to order regarding Adrian Blackwood. With clenched teeth, Victor orders the immediate capture and arrest of Adrian, decreeing coldly how to act if the young man resists arrest. He demands with fury that the men execute the traitor on the spot if he tries to run, and the elder agrees to take the lead on that hunting mission. Crowley says that since the matter involves the kid's integrity, he himself will make a point of taking care of the entire capture with maximum priority and rigor. Victor Langley thanks him and orders that the capture operation be carried out openly and proudly in the name of the Azure Dragon Guild's justice. Elder Crowley activates his teleportation magic, generating a new wave of glowing wind under his feet to depart immediately for the mission. The president smiles out of the corner of his mouth, concluding that Crowley plans to draw all the hatred of the young man's family and the White Tiger Guild straight to Azure Dragon. He knows that since Pluto is still young and hasn't matured, they cannot expose him in any way, making it their duty to bear all dangers and risks. Meanwhile, at the busy entrance of the Apex Temple, dozens of elite heroes walk around agitated in search of strong partners to raid dungeons. Several guild leaders shout in the hall offering spots for experienced tanks and damage warriors focused on difficult, high-level dungeons. Pluto observes the large glowing record scoreboard of the place and is impressed by the immensity of the hall and the amount of people present there. The young man checks his status, seeing that he is at level 12 with 77% progress, anxious to evolve fast and unlock new seals. He reflects that the dungeons there yield a lot of experience, but wonders what the best dungeon option would be so as not to waste time with tests. A young mage wearing a large blue hat greets him cheerfully, praising Pluto's appearance and asking if it is his first time at that temple. Pluto confirms politely, and the young woman introduces herself as Layla Shaw, revealing that she works there as a guide and offering to answer his questions. The kid asks what the price of the help is, and Layla smiles, praising Pluto's cleverness by warning that she charges exactly 1 gold coin per question. Pluto remembers that since he hasn't sold his prizes from the previous rift, he only has 10 coins in his pocket, concluding that he will need to go to the trading market soon. He tosses one of his shiny coins to the young woman and asks directly which of the dungeons available there yields the highest amount of experience. Layla catches the coin and is surprised by the young man's ambition, confirming that he wants to know which dungeon has the absolute experience yield. She explains that since Pluto is at level 12, his challenge limit is level 15, recommending that he avoid large-scale dungeons for now. Layla points to the mystic portal and reveals that the level 15 Abyss spider nest gives more experience, but warns that he will need to wait. She shares that the dungeon has infinite hordes of small, treacherous monsters, so forming coordinated groups to enter there takes way too long. Pluto responds that he doesn't need to wait, but the mage questions him startled, reminding him that entering there without an experienced and specialized group is suicide. Layla Shaw extends her hand, pointing to a group of well-equipped elite warriors, and explains that that team only prepared for this challenge. Suddenly, a big commotion starts in the main hall, with people shouting in astonishment that the hero group just broke the local record. The warrior screams in despair that the damned spider ate his eye and begs his team's healer to treat him immediately. Layla points at the wounded and asks Pluto if he really thinks his squad could do anything better than that elite team. Pluto simply turns his back and calmly replies that, actually, he doesn't have any squad to accompany him. The young necromancer glances sideways and reveals his true intention to challenge that dangerous dungeon entirely alone. Laylo is completely shocked by the revelation and screams in disbelief, asking if he is really going to face the abyss spider nest by himself. An awkward silence takes over the entire main hall as the other adventurers begin to stare at Pluto strangely. Pluto is confused by all that sudden astonishment, and Layla apologizes, embarrassed for yelling so loudly in the middle of the hall. An arrogant warrior starts laughing loudly at him, mocking that a necromancer wants to solo the dungeon, and jeers that it's not a kid-level place. The mage apologizes again for speaking loudly, and the young man just walks forward, saying he doesn't care because he's already used to it. Layla begs him not to try that so he doesn't end up dead, but the boy just thanks her for the information and continues on his way. In front of the immense portal, the panel reveals that the level 15 dungeon has over 1,000 monsters and recommends groups of up to 10 people. Pluto widens his eyes slightly upon realizing the absurd amount of over 1,000 creatures that inhabit the interior of that dangerous place. He smiles faintly, thinking about the absurd amount of experience he will gain to level up quickly and unlock his new powers. Since it's his first time facing so many enemies, he decides to play it safe and selects hero difficulty on the panel just to test the area. The injured adventurers watch him enter and comment that he must be crazy or have mental issues for choosing hero difficulty alone. An S-class warrior scoffs, saying not even he would dare to solo that nest, and wagers that the weak necromancer won't last even 5 minutes. As soon as he steps through the portal, Pluto is met with deep darkness and gigantic webs, covering the entire abyss spider nest. The young man feels the air extremely heavy, with the smell of decay, while listening to the disgusting sound of thousands of legs crawling through the cave. Without wasting a single second, he wields his scythe and summons his skeletal warriors, who emerge wrapped in purple spiritual flames. Upon noticing the small spiders approaching, Pluto smiles, knowing they are just handing themselves over on a silver platter to serve as experience. He watches his summons ready for combat in a perfect formation and prepares to give the attack command against the creatures. With a firm command, Pluto orders his skeletal soldiers to advance and exterminate every last one of those annoying abyss spiders. One of the undead warriors leaps with great agility, brandishing his sharp sword to deal a fatal blow against the enemy. The attack cuts the small spiders in half instantly, and experience notifications start popping up on the young necromancer's screen. However, several small spiders quickly start climbing up the skeleton's bones in a desperate attempt to immobilize the soldier. Pluto observes that his warrior ended up completely covered by the creatures and is now totally unable to move. The small spiders start biting the skeleton's skull forcefully, and the sounds of cracking echoes worryingly there. He admits he didn't expect these little pests to be so annoying, but remembers he has more than one type of soldier in his arsenal. He activates his special ability and converts one of his undead into a gunpowder skeleton that carries an immense explosive barrel. A devastating explosion consumes the location in flames and eliminates dozens of small spiders at once, generating a flood of experience. He calculates the rapid experience gain and realizes that clearing the entire nest will yield something comparable to the legendary Goblin Apocalypse scenario. With a snap of his fingers, he realizes that for someone with almost infinite explosive skeletons, that place is true paradise for leveling up. Since the spiders are tiny and very numerous, he decides the best plan is to convert all his soldiers into gunpowder skeletons. Multiple mass detonations start echoing in sequence through the cave, completely clearing the corridors filled with those little creatures. The mass bombardment yields so much solo experience that a glowing blue aura surrounds Pluto's body, indicating that he has risen to level 13. He opens his floating interface and decides to put all new attribute points into mana, knowing that magical power is all he needs. The screen shows that his magical power points have now reached the mark of 255 thanks to his equipment bonuses. He admires the glow of his lunar ring, but recognizes that he needs to level up even faster to manage to unlock the next restrictive seal. While reflecting on the new seals and his abilities, he hears a loud noise coming from above and notices a gigantic shadow approaching. A monstrous spider with glowing green eyes emerges from the ceiling and spits a thick, fast web in the direction of the young necromancer down below. Pluto reacts in time with a quick movement and narrowly dodges that sticky web that almost trapped him defenseless against the ground. Upon looking up, he is confronted with the intimidating size of the creature and realizes he is facing a formidable adult abyss spider. The monster remains stuck to the ceiling tens of meters high, preventing the gunpowder skeletons from managing to reach it with explosions. The boy gives a confident smile and generates purple spiritual smoke in his hand, remembering he has the perfect ally for long-range battles. With a mystical glow, he summons his evolved elite archer, who impressively resurfaces from the ground amidst a dense smoke of spiritual flames. Pluto points directly at the monster on the ceiling and gives the attack command for the archer to fire a magical arrow at the giant spider. The blue energy projectile is fired with impressive speed, cutting through the dark air of the cave like a true mortal bolt. The arrow explodes with full force upon hitting the target on the ceiling dead center and takes down the monster immediately, yielding another 100 experience points. The giant body plummets lifelessly to the ground, and he recognizes that without his valuable archer, there would be no way to deal with long-range enemies. Pluto analyzes the creature and reflects that his cursed-eyed marksman must be capable of firing much more powerful attacks than ordinary arrows. Pluto stares at his marksman warrior and asks very firmly for him to nail his aim and not disappoint him during combat. He looks at the massive horde of monsters head and warns with excitement that that battle will be a true bloodbath. Several of his skeletal soldiers start burning in intense flames as they position themselves tactically for defense. He commands the gunpowder skeletons to take care of all the small spiders that try to make short-range attacks. The mass detonations start again and eliminate dozens of enemies, guaranteeing another huge wave of experience for the young man. The bursts of fire consume the crawling monsters, generating a dense curtain of black smoke that spreads throughout the location. Pluto focuses his determined gaze and orders the elite archer to take care of all the creatures positioning themselves further away. The skeletal archer pulls his bowstring, accumulating a massive amount of glowing blue mana into a phantom-like arrow. The mystical shot is fired high into the air with absurd speed, cutting through the air toward the ceiling taken over by the crawling threats. The glowing projectile travels rapidly toward the swarm of green eyes, watching scarily in the darkness of that cave. The special magical arrow rain ability is activated, covering a giant area with hundreds of luminous and lethal projectiles. A torrential rain of energy arrows falls upon the enemy hordes, instantly destroying each of the creatures in the path. The precise shots pierce the shells of the giant spiders without giving any chance of reaction for the monsters to escape the attack. The entire cave environment is lit up by the consecutive magical explosions that disintegrate the nests scattered across the dark rocks. The young man praises his A-class cursed-eyed marksman for dealing both area damage and single target damage in an absurd way. He notes that the only downside is the high mana cost and realizes that even with his lunar ring, he would run out of energy after just a few shots. Satisfied with the result, he celebrates for having cleared all the weaker hordes and prepares for the next step of his journey. Pluto raises his head anxiously because he knows the moment has finally arrived to face the terrible boss of that dangerous apex dungeon. Outside, the arrogant warrior looks at the portal with impatience, finding it strange that the Necromancer hasn't run out yet. The injured colleague supposes the boy is already dead, but the elite warrior remembers that if that happened, the system would have already notified them on the screen. He then suggests the boy must be shaking with fear in some corner, but his partner warns that there is no safe place to hide. The warrior panics at the possibility of Pluto facing the entire horde alone, and the group leader starts considering that hypothesis. The injured adventurer shouts furiously, disbelieving it, and remembers that a mere C-ranked necromancer could never manage to deal with that swarm. The S-class warrior grows thoughtful because he hates admitting the chance that a simple undead user might actually clear the nest. He remembers Pluto's confident expression when crossing the portal and feels a strange sensation that the boy might actually pull off the impossible. He shakes his head, dismissing the idea because he'd note even if Pluto cleared the hordes, there would be a monster he would never be able to beat. The terrible Empress of the Abyss Spiders watches everything from above with her multiple red eyes glowing intensely in total darkness. The giant monster plummets from the ceiling with a violent crash that makes the cave floor tremble before the small silhouette of the young hero. Pluto is surprised by the creature's immensity and admits he can smell the strong scent of death emanating from the dungeon boss so close. The terrible Empress opens her jaws filled with sharp teeth, revealing a monstrous mouth ready to devour anyone who approaches. With a quick movement, she delivers a powerful blow with one of her sharp leads, forcing the young man to quickly dodge to the side. One of his loyal skeletal warriors advances with agility, brandishing his shield and sword to defend against the beast's overwhelming attack. Pluto calmly adjusts his posture and mocks the creature's attack, asking if the friendly way spiders say hello. He points his mystical scythe and warns that he will return the welcome in his own way while positioning his elite gunpowder skeletons. The Empress roars deafeningly, but is hit by a precise slash wrapped in intense flames that burns part of her shell. Several of his summons advance at high speed against the giant monster, attacking in a coordinated way from all sides of the cave. One of the elite warriors uses his large metal shield to block a lightning-fast strike from the Empress, protecting the attack formation. New mass detonations from the gunpowder skeletons hit the boss dead center, generating a sequence of devastating explosions throughout the nest. Pluto observes that the giant beast continues to resist bravely and admits she really fights with a lot of ferocity for being the local boss. With a red glow shining intensely in his gaze, the young man activates his mental power, imposing an authoritative order for the monster to freeze. The powerful fear ability is successfully cast, causing the Empress to become completely paralyzed by terror under his command. With the monster immobilized under his absolute control, Pluto approaches calmly, knowing that now only the easiest part of the job remains. The young man focuses his determined gaze and decides to finish the combat by bombarding the paralyzed creature with his explosive Undead. Dozens of skeletons carrying gunpowder barrels run toward the Empress and generate a spectacular explosion that consumes the entire monster. The Spider Empress is overwhelmingly defeated, guaranteeing Pluto a legendary reward of 35,000 experience points. A new mystical aura glows around the young man, showing on the floating screen that he has successfully risen to level 14. He celebrates the broken pace of evolution for having gone up 2 levels and plans to do another run on Apocalypse difficulty to reach level 15. Upon seeing his warriors collecting the treasures, he realizes the amount of loot is so immense that his inventory is almost out of free space. Outside the dungeon, the arrogant warrior looks at the clock, indignant that more than half an hour has passed without any sign of the mysterious Necromancer. The group's female warrior calls him to leave, guaranteeing that guy would never manage to get out alive or complete that high-level challenge. The S-class warrior agrees dejectedly and admits it was foolish of him to expect anything from someone who isn't A or S rank. He quickly turns around and shouts for his teammates to wait for him as he runs to join the group. Suddenly, a shrill sound rings out throughout the temple, drawing the young man's immediate attention. As he turns around startled toward the portal, he recognizes the alert sound for breaking a dungeon record and breaks out in a cold sweat upon realizing what that truly means. The entire temple erupts into a huge uproar, with several people commenting in surprise about the nest record having been broken again. A warrior in dark armor questions if the feat was done by the solitary Necromancer, but a man next to her starts laughing, thinking it impossible. The large glowing scoreboard displays that the level 14 Necromancer named Pluto cleared the dungeon in just 22 minutes. An intense light shines at the temple portal, and Pluto calmly resurfaces with his hands in his pockets after successfully completing his challenge. The elite warrior is completely perplexed to see Pluto return and can't understand how he managed to break the record alone. Pluto realizes everyone is staring at him and wonders, confused, if he ended up getting any spider web stuck on his own face. Layla runs excitedly toward him, asking how he did that, and Pluto simply replies that the gunpowder skeletons handled everything well. Suddenly, the warrior who mocked him earlier screams in the middle of the hall, accusing the young necromancer of lying blatantly. He steps forward irritated, saying the dungeon has thousands of spiders, and it would be impossible to summon so many explosive soldiers in that time frame. Pluto stares at him in an extremely cold and disdainful way, wondering to himself if by any chance he knows or should care about that man. Other warriors begin to whisper in agreement with the suspicion because of the long cooldown time that necromancers normally have. The man says there's no problem keeping the strategy a secret, but demands the youth stop telling absurd lies to the public. The arrogant warrior narrows his eyes and continues his accusation insistently, insinuating the boy has hidden motives for lying. He approaches intimidatingly and questions if Pluto is actually hiding some kind of dirty secret to manage to break the record. The necromancer emits a frightening purple aura while silently summoning a warrior and asks with a firm voice if the man really wants the truth. Feeling the enormous spiritual pressure, the man steps back startled with a quick jump backward, desperately trying to distance himself from that threat. He starts breaking out in a cold sweat, trembling with dread upon noticing a murderous intent in Pluto's gaze, and immediately senses that the young man has killed in the past. The man tries to regain control of his posture, thinking the boy would never dare to attack him in public with so many witnesses in the temple. He tries to maintain his pose, pointing his finger, and questions what elite guild would accept a mere necromancer, and how he managed to enter that hall. A blonde mage backs the accusation and raises the suspicion that Pluto might actually be an undercover spy sent by some rival nation. The adventurers start questioning the boy's objective, while Layla watches that whole tense scene, extremely frightened by the accusation. The accuser smiles with pride, feeling the pleasure of seeing how his words are successfully shaping everyone's opinions around him swiftly. The S-class warrior decides to stay at the location to watch the spectacle, curious to see what Pluto will do with everyone turned against him. Pluto calmly summons his bone soldiers, proving his class, and moves to the second point by asking if they want to know how he got in. With a simple movement, the young man raises his hand, revealing the luxurious golden crystal glowing intensely before the entire crowd in the hall. The heroes recognize the elite golden teleportation crystal and panic upon realizing that only senior members of the major guilds possess it. The man who mocked him swallows hard, trembling with dread upon realizing Pluto's level of influence. While the young man starts talking about his identity, Pluto decides to ignore them, telling them to guess whatever they want, and warns that his only focus is leveling up with no time for idiot detective games. The accuser is paralyzed with dread, realizing too late that the mysterious young man with the golden crystal is not someone he can mess with. The S-class warrior watches the end of the discussion and is very impressed with Pluto's mental control and unshackable posture. Pluto reflects that if President Langley hadn't asked for secrecy, he would have beaten that fool up, and regrets using the crystal so early. He sighs, thinking that after dealing with Adrian and now this fellow, his body seems to have a mystical magnet that attracts only imbecilic people. Determined to focus on training, he selects Apocalypse difficulty on the dungeon panel, anxious to reach level 15 quickly. The injured warrior from the group that broke the previous record watches the portal glow intensely in absolute silence at his decision. He is startled to see that the necromancer entered the spider nest again and chose to challenge the location at Apocalypse difficulty level. Once again inside the nest, Pluto analyzes the enemy hordes, remembering that the small and numerous monsters of the dungeon are his perfect target. The young hero observes his summons with great seriousness while planning the best strategy to clear the location without taking any damage. He knows that the swarm of small crawling spiders is a true nightmare to face for his ordinary undead soldiers. On the other hand, he gives a side smile, knowing that for his explosive gunpowder soldiers, that numerous horde is a true blessing. One of his explosive skeletons is entirely surrounded by the enemy spiders, which start burning as the fuse of the gunpowder barrel lights up. The barrel detonates with destructive force and eliminates dozens of enemies instantly, securing a huge amount of solo experience for him. The immense experience gain causes the young man to finally rise to level 15, with 5 new attribute points ready for allocation. A mystical warning pops up on his screen informing him that a new restriction seal has been unlocked, and he celebrates by confirming this happens every 5 levels. The screen details that now his mana limit has been removed, permanently increasing his maximum magical power with each eliminated enemy that possesses mana. He realizes excitedly that all human heroes and dungeon beasts that use magical power can now become walking mana points for his arsenal. Pluto looks into the dark depths of the spider nest and prepares to exterminate every creature there, aiming to maximize his attributes to the limit. With a wicked smile, Pluto concludes that that dungeon full of mana-bearing enemies is literally his personal paradise for evolving fast. A monstrous spider of impressive size roars with extreme aggressiveness, preparing to charge with total fury against the summons. The creature's sharp lead grazes the young man's head in an extremely fast blow that cracks the rocky floor of the dark cave. Without showing any worry, Pluto simply watches one of his warrior skeletons leap, brandishing his sharp sword in a clean slash. The blade cuts the monster's lead precisely, spurting a green, viscous liquid that stains the rocks of that sinister spider nest. With another devastating blow, the soldiers eliminate another enemy, securing another 100 experience points in the young Necromancer's count. The system notification displays that a mana-bearing target was successfully eliminated, increasing the maximum magical power limit by 1 point. He analyzes the energy glowing in his hand and confirms with satisfaction that his maximum mana limit actually increased to 266. Pluto calmly turns around and calls for his powerful lead archer to take the lead for the next wave of ranged attacks. The archer pulls the bowstring, concentrating an immense amount of blue magical energy that starts sparking intensely around the skull. With absolute precision, the undead soldier fires a powerful mystical projectile that cracks the air and heads at high speed toward the nest's ceiling. The magical arrow rain ability is activated, creating a runic circle in the air that fires hundreds of luminous, fast projectiles. The mana arrows pierce dozens of abyss spiders at the same time, filling the screen with sequential experience bonus notifications. Pluto smiles upon receiving the bonus of over 104 mana targets eliminated at once, raising his maximum power limit to 470. He reflects that gaining 105 mana points through ordinary means would require 20 level gains and celebrates the broken speed of his new evolution. He notes that breaking the seal only raises the mana cap and not the current value, but knows his remaining energy of 120 is more than enough. Pluto orders the archer to stop the attacks to conserve energy because they still need to face the boss, and the skeleton readily accepts. With a simple command, the young necromancer indicates that the ordinary gunpowder skeletons can take over the extermination of the remaining spiders in the location. The explosive skeleton runs holding the immense gunpowder barrel with the lit fuse wrapped in intense flames, ready to detonate against the monsters. A series of devastating explosions consumes the way back as Pluto and his archer walk calmly toward the great beast's lair. Outside, the warriors debate whether the necromancer is capable of breaking the record, but the other warns that the dungeon's apocalypse level is terrifying. The squad leader explains that the creature's strength strength increases insanely in apocalypse mode and wagers that the challenge would require at least an hour. Meanwhile, inside the nest, the gigantic abyss spider empress emerges imposingly from the ceiling covered in red energy in less than half an hour of combat. The young hero wastes no time and initiates a massive bombardment of flames that repeatedly explodes against the terrible empress, paralyzed by magic. An immense gust of wind blows away all the flame smoke in the air, and Pluto calmly concludes that the dungeon boss has been defeated with total ease. The mystical screen confirms that the Empress's defeat yielded 60,000 experience points, making the young man jump straight to level 17. He gives a satisfied smile, praising the temple's insane yield, and celebrates for soloing the dungeon and not having to split any of that experience. The best part is that breaking the seal allowed him to accumulate 615 extra magical power points, raising his total mana to 880. He analyzes his inventory screen full of rare gems and weapons, deciding to go immediately to the temple's trading hall to clear out his full backpack. Suddenly, the new record sound signal echoes shrilly through the hall, and the adventurers look startled, realizing the young man did it again. The group leader turns pale, disbelieving that a solitary hero managed to beat in half an hour the record that his 5-man team took 40 minutes to achieve. The official panel updates and displays for everyone that the Necromancer Pluto completed the Apocalypse Mode challenge alone in exactly 36 minutes. The young man walks through the portal under the shocked gazes of the temple public, who now view him as a true divine, level elite warrior. The S-class warrior celebrates ecstatically upon seeing the boy break 2 legendary records on the same day, something unprecedented in the history of that great temple. He analyzes Pluto's calm posture, mentally praising his strong mind and mysterious identity, while the young man looks around searching for the mage Layla. The elite warrior decides that Pluto is his ideal professional hero and swears to himself that he will train hard to manage to fight alongside the boy. He tells his group leader that he is extremely motivated to train in another dungeon, but his injured companion seems very dejected. With tears in his eyes, the leader laments having trained for a month and lost an eye just to see a solo hero break his record in 30 minutes. He decides to call his mother to announce that he is going to take over the family fish market upon realizing that the professional hero life definitely isn't for him. The young man walks sadly toward the temple exit while adding to the call with his mother the small detail that he ended up losing an eye in the rift. Pluto locates the mage and asks where the trade area is, but the young lady refuses the payment, raising her hands in embarrassment at the young man's presence. The young man raises an eyebrow, confused, and directly questions why she wouldn't accept the gold coin he offered as payment. Layla pulls her large blue hat to hide her blushing face and shyly tells him to accept that free information as a special bonus. She reflects on the fact that Pluto possesses the golden crystal and broke 2 records on the same day, deciding she needs to stay by his side. The mage cheerfully offers to personally guide him to the trade hall, and the young necromancer accepts the kindness, thanking her calmly. The two enter a luxurious, well-lit corridor, and the guide announces that they have finally arrived at the prestigious Apex dungeon trading area. The merchant in a suit and tie receives them politely, asking if the duo wishes to buy new equipment or sell rare rift items. In thought, the shopkeeper looks down on the boy upon seeing he is just a level 17 necromancer and coldly tells him to put the items on the table. Pluto comments that the wooden table seems too small to accommodate his things, but the merchant explains that it's a premium platform. The young man shrugs and extends his hand, accumulating his purple mystical energy to empty his entire inventory and begin evaluating the loot. The merchant observes the boy with a look of distrust and curiosity, eager to see exactly what he managed to bring back from the dungeon. An immense magical panel appears in the air with dozens of glowing compartments filled with extremely rare high-level weapons and shields. A colossal pile of metal armor and magical swords starts to materialize and pile up impressively on the trading platform. Pluto looks up with a slight side smile and confirms that the items are indeed starting to pile up in an organized way upward on the table. The merchant widens his eyes completely and screams in panic upon seeing the absurd amount of elite treasures the young man pulled out of his inventory. He starts breaking out in a cold sweat, stuttering as he asks where so many rare equipments came from and how many dungeon raids were necessary for that. The young man calmly explains that since he always trains alone, he doesn't need to split the prizes, and the shopkeeper suspects he belongs to some wealthy family. With a fake, friendly smile, the merchant asks Pluto to return the following day because he needs quite a bit of time to evaluate and catalog everything. Pluto accepts the deadline, promising to return tomorrow, but the shopkeeper soon indicates that the large combat equipment gallery is right next door. The youth reflects that his old clothes and staves have become useless and decides this is the perfect moment to obtain a major status upgrade. He agrees to take a look, and Layla the mage smiles excitedly, saying she will make a point of guiding the young man through the best corridors of that area. They enter the immense pavilion filled with weapon shelves, and Pluto thanks the mage for her help while examining the options displayed on site. Layla excitedly points to a level 10 purple scythe that grants a special bonus of 1 extra warrior summoned for Necromancer classes. She explains that having 1 more soldier is crucial for this class and guarantees that for most warriors, that weapon would be of divine level. The young man tells her to keep looking, and the girl goes into shock, not understanding how a necromancer wouldn't be interested in an item as legendary as this one. She points to a special glass showcase right ahead and guarantees with great certainty that he will find something extremely valuable inside there. The showcase displays a gorgeous level 15 amethyst ring that grants a passive bonus of 50 extra magical power points to the user. The mage explains that the ring doesn't have active magical effects, but emphasizes that the mana bonus is completely critical for casting abilities. Pluto looks at his legendary ring and reflects that 50 points are nothing compared to the 100-point mystical ring he got from Elder Crowley. The young man gives an awkward laugh, saying he doesn't need mana, and the girl grows even more confused upon seeing he turned down another incredible accessory. Layla walks with her head down, intrigued to see the boy showing no interest in summon count bonuses, and even less in mana points. Unable to contain her curiosity, she quickly turns around and asks with plenty of energy what on earth he is actually looking for in that hall. Pluto doesn't answer right away and focuses his gaze intently toward a distant showcase, as if he were under the influence of some strong spell. Immense phantom, like purple shadows, start floating around a glass dome, emitting sinister whispers that echo throughout the area. Mystically attracted by the black shadows, the young necromancer walks slowly toward the showcase, feeling a very familiar energy emanate from there. Pluto admits to himself that he was drawn completely unconsciously to the location, and that suddenly he was already standing before that rare piece. He stares at the unique, quality black cloak of the underworld king, whose description reveals the dark power of sacrificing 100 summons for an elite one. Layla runs over worriedly, asking if he is really interested in that display cloak, and the young man questions what the problem is with looking at it. She explains scared that the cloak is useless because no necromancer, even at level 100, could manage to have 100 warriors at once to sacrifice. Pluto thinks with a discreet smile that maintaining and sacrificing 100 summons at the same time might be impossible for others, but not for his powers. He reflects excitedly that with the cloak, he will be able to summon elite warriors who are incredibly powerful and much more destructive than ordinary creatures. He focuses his gaze on the dark attire and concludes with absolute certainty that that legendary cloak was tailor-made for his abilities. Even seeing the warning that the item is for display only and not for sale, Pluto whispers with ambition that he will find a way to get it no matter what. Layla blushes with shame and admiration upon staring at the unshackable determination and fearless look of that mysterious young hero before her. The young man asks about the cloak's history, and she tells him that the rare piece dropped from a demon beast in the rift, but became a decoration because it seemed weak to the guilds. The boy touches the protective glass with his hand and mentalizes a message to the dark piece, understanding the reason it called out to him mystically. He observes the cloak through the reflection of the display glass and silently promises in thought that he will free it from there very soon. Pluto turns to the guide, asking if there is any method to obtain the forbidden item, and the mage replies, startled, that she has no idea. She bites her finger thoughtfully, admitting that maybe there is a single way to get the rare piece, but warns she isn't sure if the plan would work. She reveals that the temple holds an annual elite tournament and that the grand champion earns the privilege of choosing any trade item as a prize. The mage adds that no winner has ever chosen a showcase item before, and therefore she isn't sure if the tournament rules would allow that reward. Pluto gives a side smile, stating that what isn't forbidden is allowed, and concludes confidently that he will just need to win the immense Apex Championship. Layla is left completely jaw-dropped at such calmness and screams in disbelief, asking if the boy has any idea of the level of that championship. She explains seriously that the competition is jointly sponsored by the 5 largest guilds in the country, allowing only the greatest elite geniuses. The girl brings her hand to her forehead in despair, commenting that standing out and claiming the championship crown amidst so many monsters is harder than ascending to the heavens. Pluto ignores her despair and promises the dark attire once more that he will rescue it as soon as he wins the grand tournament title. The mage screams irritated, asking if he even paid attention to what she said, and warns that elite SS class warriors dominate the championship. The young man turns around with an unshakable gaze, replying that he heard very well, and simply questioning her about what the real problem would be in facing the guilds. With his eyes glowing intensely in a mysterious purple tone, Pluto guarantees with total certainty, and in an imposing manner, that his victory is absolutely guaranteed. Layla rubs her forehead speechlessly, sighing loudly, and wonders mentally where on earth so much confidence comes from, and if he truly understood the rules. Pluto curiously asks when this year's tournament starts, and Layla replies that the big event will begin very soon, in 2 weeks. He reflects that 2 weeks of preparation is enough time to significantly raise his level and absolutely maximize his mystical power. With his fist clenched and surrounded by strong sparks of energy, the young man focuses on plotting his perfect intense training plan for the next few days. The guy focuses on his mystical interface, which indicates that his mana is at 270, and realizes he needs to find a way to regenerate it quickly. He tells the mage that he is going back home to rest and promises to look for her the next day, while the girl stutters, confirming her presence. A pillar of blue mystical light envelopes the young necromancer, instantly teleporting the guy outside the grounds of Apex's luxurious temple. Layla is confused as to why he is going to sleep instead of training hard with the little time remaining, concluding that the boy is an unpredictable professional. Night falls over the busy city, and the lights of Pluto's small apartment turn on, revealing the resting place of the silent hero. Pluto steps out of the shower, drying his hair with a towel, feeling an immense relief to finally have some free time to relax and recharge his energy. However, before lying down on his bed, he decides to do one last important check on how his army's abilities actually work. He summons his elite sniper and seriously asks how many special abilities the cursed I-class has in its menu. Pluto orders the skeleton to immediately open the detailed technique panel, and the elite soldier promptly obeys his master's command. The glowing screen expands, displaying the techniques of enhanced mystical vision, concentrated arrows of pure energy, and the devastating arrow rain. The fourth and most intriguing technique is revealed to be the star-piercing shot, capable of ignoring defenses and dealing true damage based on the mana cost. Pluto thinks the description is fantastic because it ignores defenses, but curiously questions why he has never seen his valuable servant using this technique. The elite archer explains that the star shot requires a long 3-minute cooldown, which makes using it very risky in the middle of rifts. He adds that by reducing the energy consumption, the projectile becomes too small, drastically decreasing the actual destructive power against large bosses. Pluto reflects that his large mana pool solves the size of the shot, but understands that the channeling time is a fatal flaw in fast-paced fights. The young man shakes his head, deciding to leave this matter aside for now, lying down on his humble bunk to enjoy his rare opportunity for sleep. Before closing his eyes, he commands the elite sniper to stand guard and watch the room, and the skeleton immediately accepts the protection order. Lying on his back, Pluto feels the wooden mattress of his apartment and thinks that, despite being simple, that place brings him enormous comfort and softness. The guy closes his eyes and falls asleep peacefully, realizing he has never felt such a sense of peace and lightness in his exhausting previous life on Earth. Suddenly, the scenery darkens completely, and a distant male voice begins to echo in his mind, insistently ordering him to wake up. The dark silhouette of an elite warrior holding an assault rifle emerges from the shadows, harshly calling out to the sleepy young recruit. The veteran soldier wearing a cap glares at him with irritation and sternly asks if he was sleeping on guard, running the risk of suffering an invasion. Startled, young Pluto grips his weapon tightly, and the veteran reprimands the guy, reminding him that dozing off while on watch can cost the lives of the whole group. He firmly explains that whoever is on watch carries not only their own safety, but also the responsibility of keeping the entire platoon alive. Suddenly, another combatant emerges from the shadows of the corridor and friendly asks the veteran to cut some slack and go easy on the young recruit. The crouching man with the rifle makes fun of the scolding, asking if the veteran plans to pin the blame for the country's entire invasion on the young newbie's back. The veteran angrily replies, reminding him that they are in enemy territory being hunted like dogs, and yells at Caleb so that he understands the real danger there. Caleb calmly explains that he knows the danger and reveals that the newbie has gone 2 days without sleeping, willingly offering to take over his shift. The warrior Caleb smiles and comments that sleeping deeply on the cold concrete of that war-torn floor is proof that the kid has a lot of courage. The youth awkwardly scratches the back of his neck, replying that he grew up sleeping on the floor, and the veteran mocks him by asking if he really feels proud of saying that. Caleb sighs with a slight smile, revealing the dream that when the war is over, he can sleep in a bed so soft that he feels his own body sink into it. Suddenly, a destructive missile crosses the air at extremely high speed, tearing through the skies and falling relentlessly toward the exact direction of their shelter. Caleb widens his eyes, seized by absolute terror upon seeing the deadly glow of the approaching immense explosion reflecting directly in his retina. A deafening detonation pulverizes the location in an immense, devastating firestorm that consumes and destroys everything around it in a few seconds. The intense and violent tongues of flames completely cover the silhouettes of the soldiers, who are instantly swallowed by the overwhelming heat. Pluto opens his eyes abruptly and desperately, with ragged breathing, overcome by a terrible feeling of shock upon waking up from that nightmare. The elite archer who was on guard calmly warns that he has woken up, and the young man sits up on the bed still very shaky because of the memories. Pluto runs his hand over his head, realizing that it was all just a terrible dream from his painful past, and notices that day has already broken in the room. He takes a deep breath, adjusting the collar of his dress shirt, and focuses his mind on preparing to start his new activities scheduled for the day. The guy checks his mystical interface and sees that his magic power bar, which was previously low, has now fully regenerated, reaching maximum. Feeling that his physical and mental conditions have reached the perfect level, he clenches his fist, confident that the time has come to give his all. At the grand entrance of the Apex Temple, a golden flash shines brightly, indicating the sudden arrival of elite warriors from major guilds. The local heroes whisper in astonishment, commenting on rumors of a C-ranked necromancer who broke 2 records in a single day in the hall. Pluto walks focused amidst the crowd, knowing he needs to find Guide Layla to sort out all the details of his next steps in the tournament. Suddenly, Mage Layla appears, waving cheerfully from the top of a grand staircase, calling out his name with a lot of excitement for them to meet. She runs smiling toward him and suggests that they first visit the temple's trading area to collect all the gold from yesterday's sales. The guy agrees and accompanies her while she asks if the reason he scheduled today's meeting was just to collect the sales profits. Pluto focuses his determined gaze on her and asks if there is any other dungeon there that has even more more monsters than the spider nest. Layla is shocked and warns that more monsters does not mean more experience, questioning why the guy wants to torture himself with challenges like that. Pluto remains in absolute silence until the mage gives up and reveals that these places actually exist under the category of large-scale dungeons. She explains that in these colossal maps, the number of creatures can reach tens of thousands and that the difficulty increases geometrically. She holds up 3 fingers and explains that the temple has a strict rule requiring a group of at least 3 warriors to be able to register. Pluto realizes he needs 2 more people, and Layla points out that the teams there are fixed and strictly reject newbies at the last minute. Pluto cracks a slight smile and comments that in that case, he will only need to find 1 more person, pointing directly at the mage in front of him. Layla screams in total panic, begging him not to include her in that dangerous plan under any circumstances, which she considers a death trap. The boy offers gold coins as compensation, but she warns that even if she accepted, only a complete idiot would agree to join them now. Pluto and Layla interrupt the argument and slowly look back, extremely surprised by the sound of a timid voice coming from the temple hall. The black-haired guy raises his hand, rather timidly and hesitatingly asks if by any chance he could join their new team. Layla stares at him with a completely perplexed expression and sighs despondently, thinking to herself that a fool really did show up there immediately. The young man runs excitedly toward them, confirming that he heard they needed 1 more member, and readily offers himself to complete the trinity. Layla narrows her eyes suspiciously and warns that if he is not a complete fool, then he must certainly have some hidden motive behind it. The young man scratches his cheek rather awkwardly and admits that he does indeed have a secret secondary intention for wanting to join the squad. The mage points her index finger directly at the young man's chest triumphantly and shouts aloud, confirming that she knew it from the very beginning. Completely scared, she quickly hides behind Pluto's broad back, asking in panic if that fellow's target wasn't herself. Pluto ignores his guide's despair and tells the newbie that he is very welcome in the group regardless of what his real motives might be. He adds that he also has his personal reasons for that raid, and she complains that it's easy to talk when you're a man and incredibly strong. The girl remembers with dread that she does not belong to a combat class, and Pluto asks her to calm down, guaranteeing that no enemy or ill-intentioned ally will harm her. The guy focuses his determined gaze and makes a silent promise that under his guard, he will never allow her to suffer a single scratch in the rift. Layla is left completely speechless, staring at the boy, and feels her heart race at the immense firmness and protection in his words. She pulls down her immense blue hat to hide her completely flushed face and timidly asks the young man to stop saying such nonsense. Pluto approaches casually and asks what makeup she is wearing because he finds the color of her cheeks extremely natural and red. Layla steps back with her eyes gleaming in comical fury and screams at him to stay out of her way, calling the boy an audacious pervert. Pluto decides to end the conversation and walks toward the trading hall, inviting his teammates to follow him. Without further discussion, Layla hurries to follow the Necromancer, screaming desperately not to be left alone in the hallway next to the strangely behaving boy. The 3 walk together in an organized single file through the luxurious stone quarters of the temple, heading toward the commercial negotiation area. As soon as they arrive, the merchant greets them with extreme enthusiasm and greets the guy, joyfully confirming that the entire count has been finalized. He readily guarantees that the payment is fully prepared and extends a very respectful invitation to guide Pluto directly to the VIP lounge. Layla whispers to the new ally, pointing upwards, and comments on how rare it is to see the employees of that trading hall act with so much respect. The newbie looks up at the ceiling of the hall, confused, and the mage explains in astonishment that the pile of treasures Pluto sold reached the ceiling of the place. The boy's eyes sparkle with immense admiration upon hearing this, and he celebrates, having absolute certainty that he chose the ideal leader to follow. Pluto returns to the hallway with the payment settled and asks the reason for so much commotion, while the attendant waves goodbye warmly. The new warrior asks if everything was finalized successfully, and Pluto confirms, stating that the three-person squad is fully ready to depart. The young necromancer focuses his determined gaze and firmly decrees that the group's main objective will be to brave the feared large-scale rift. From the trading hall, the merchant watches the trio leave, and his expression changes to absolute shock upon hearing that only 3 people will attempt the map. In front of the immense red portal of the Black Ice Fortress, local warriors stir upon noticing the presence of the necromancer who broke the records. The crowd disbelieves the trio's courage, while Pluto confirms that they are standing before the portal of the new and dangerous Level 17 challenge. He analyzes the floating interface, which recommends groups of 20 to 50 adventurers, and smiles out of the corner of his mouth upon seeing there are over 2,000 creatures in there. Pluto notes that even the experienced Azure Dragon Guild squad took over 10 hours of consecutive fighting to complete the difficult dungeon. Layla asks which difficulty option they should select at the portal, and the team's newbie immediately replies that they should obviously go with bronze. Pluto disagrees, warning that the bronze experience would be too little to split, and firmly announces that he will select the apocalypse mode to break the record. The mage immediately panics, asking him not to commit this madness of trying to compete against the best elite squads of the major guilds. Suddenly, an immense shadow looms behind Layla, accompanied by a deep and intimidating voice that harshly asks who they think they are. Looking back in sheer terror, the young mage immediately recognizes the presence of the Dreaded Fang Tooth squad from the famous White Tiger Guild. The group is led by Captain Jordan Chase, and local adventurers whisper that they have returned much better equipped to break the Azure Dragon record. The captain in black armor arrogantly asks who wanted to compete with his elite squad, and Layla stammers in reply that it was no one. Jordan Chase extends his large iron hand and intimidatingly touches the mage's shoulder, causing her to break out in a cold sweat of extreme dread. However, the group's newbie firmly positions himself in front of the captain, confidently guaranteeing that Pluto's team will surpass all records. Jordan Chase recognizes the arrogant necromancer who broke previous records and directly asks which group he belongs to and how many of them there are. Pluto calmly replies that his squad of only 3 people was formed recently and does not yet have any official name. The warriors of the White Tiger team, standing behind Jordan Chase, immediately change their expressions to one of total disbelief. The arrogant captain raises his head and begins to laugh in an extremely loud and hysterical manner at all that unbelievable revelation. He mocks them by shouting that challenging a large-scale dungeon with only 3 people is pure madness and calls them idiots who shouldn't be there. The captain laughs and claims they only entered the temple using connections, and the young necromancer coldly asks what is so funny about all that. Without paying any attention to the mockery, Pluto turns around and warns his teammates that there is no need to waste time there. Jordan Chase watches him walk toward the immense mystical portal with a look of mistrust, intrigued by his extremely calm posture. The captain shouts imposingly, ordering them to stop immediately before crossing the entrance barrier of the dangerous dungeon. Pluto halts his steps and glances slightly over his shoulder, silently waiting to hear what the arrogant warrior has to say. Jordan Chase intimidatingly shouts, warning that if he and the mage want to commit suicide on the map, he won't try to stop them from committing this folly. However, the captain firmly points his index finger directly at the young black-haired warrior and loudly decrees that he is not going. He recalls that he invited the newbie to join his elite group and was refused under the excuse of training in the abyss spider nest. The black-haired boy starts breaking out in a cold sweat, overcome by silent panic upon realizing that the feared captain actually remembered the entire refusal. Jordan Chase praises him as a rare S-rank professional and adds that following two weak people like Pluto and Layla would be a waste of a gift. The crowd whispers that publicly refusing the captain's invitation would be the definitive end of that boy's career within the influential rival guild. The boy worries and reflects that he will suffer severe punishments if he refuses, but decides that his real desire is to face the large-scale dungeons with Pluto. Feeling the weight of all that enormous pressure, the S-rank boy glances sideways at Pluto and hesitatingly asks what he should do. Layla whispers desperately in Pluto's ear, reminding him that if Karen backs out, the team will disband, and they won't be able to register for the rift. Pluto calmly replies that he won't force him, and that he should just follow his heart, leaving Layla annoyed by his lack of persuasion. Karen is surprised and touched by the Necromancer's attitude, and mentally repeats the words about following his own path free from shackles. He takes a determined, deep breath as a glowing golden energy begins to emanate directly from his eyes, focused beneath his fringe of hair. Karen raises his head and shouts with extreme courage in front of everyone, announcing that he will challenge the large-scale dungeon alongside his new leader, Pluto. Jordan Chase's face darkens completely upon hearing the public refusal, and the White Tiger captain displays an expression of deep pent-up anger. He grits his teeth in pure fury, murmuring quite scarily and threateningly that boy's courage in refusing him will cost him dearly. The captain turns around, extremely angry with clenched fists, and fixes his murderous gaze on the backs of the group walking toward the portal. He blames the Necromancer for giving the boy that false confidence and swears with hatred that he will make the three of them bitterly regret it if they make it out alive. The arrogant warrior concludes with a side smirk that in the country's history, no team of just 3 people has ever managed to make it out of that place alive. He cruelly yells at the 3 of them to enjoy their final moments of life while watching the group take their final steps toward danger. Pluto just gives a completely unshackable side smirk and firmly whispers that they will be the ones to write a new history. The portal's red magic energy whirlpool completely envelops them, instantly teleporting the trio inside the ice rift. Jordan Chase orders his elite squad to forget those suicidal fools and focuses all his attention on conquering the fortress's first place. The other armored warriors raise their sharp weapons in the air and shout in unison, confirming that they are ready to march toward the challenge. Once inside the Black Ice Fortress, Karen is startled by the small and decaying size of the starting cave, and the mage admits that it's her first time too. Pluto maintains his focused posture and very firmly determines that the group must keep moving forward without hesitation through the rift's icy tunnels. Pluto walks alongside the new ally and asks about his S rank, and the boy proudly replies that he was the only one in his year to achieve this level. The leader asks what the specialty of his elite class is, and Karen gives a mysterious smile, saying he prefers to show his power in practice. Layla screams worriedly, asking him to be careful not to cave in the cavern roof, and the boy asks her to calm down, guaranteeing he knows what he's doing. A glowing bluish, white magic smoke begins to float around Karen's fist, emitting a hissing sound as he accumulates his concentrated mana, with his fist wrapped in green energy. Karen proudly reveals that his special class is Space Cutter, capable of tearing through the rift's dimensions. With a swift strike, he rips the actual physical space before them, creating an immense glowing dimensional tear wrapped in bluish energy in the air. Pluto watches the cut, intrigued, asking what the actual use of that ability is, and Karen simply replies that one rift only does a little. The S-rank youth adds that true mystical power is revealed when he manages to open a second dimensional portal at another point on the map. To demonstrate how his technique works, he inserts his right arm directly inside the floating spatial tier before them. Karen's arm reappears at another point, snatching Layla's hat, and he explains that the interconnected rifts allow the passage of items and people With a funny move, he puts the blue hat back on the startled mage's head, who is left not understanding how the object traveled through space. He explains that he can open a portal out of the map, serving as an emergency escape route, and Pluto praises the technique as a valuable asset. Karen adds that he can rip space to anywhere he has seen in a photo, but points out that greater distances consume much more mana. Layla is surprised to realize the reason Karen accepted the challenge so fast, knowing he has a perfect escape plan in case everything goes wrong. In thought, the black-haired youth focuses his determined gaze and admits that even if he didn't have that escape route, he would still agree to fight. Karen praises his own S-rank mystical class and asks if Pluto's true class doesn't also belong to the same supreme level. Pluto walks ahead with his hands in his pockets and calmly replies that his class is actually just that of an ordinary necromancer. The guy gives a slight side smile and simply explains that his summon limit is just a little higher than normal. Karen is surprised and curiously wonders if just a small bonus to the number of servants would be enough to make him so strong. The black-haired boy turns to the group's mage and asks what her class would be based on her large blue sorceress hat. Layla replies quite despondently, revealing that she possesses a common A-rank support class without featuring any very special abilities. Karen yawns with disdain, casually stating that he found the revelation quite boring, leaving the mage visibly annoyed there. Pluto interrupts the subject upon spotting a bright light shining at the end of the dark corridor, signaling that they are about to leave the cave. Taking their final steps out of the icy tunnel, the three adventurers come across a monumental scenery that leaves them in absolute silence. An immense medieval castle covered in snow and surrounded by dark mist looms imposingly before the trio, revealing the true black ice fortress. Karen analyzes the colossal map the size of a small town, and Layla worries, saying it would take them whole days to explore everything alone. Pluto wields his battle scythe and very seriously warns that he will remind them how the true strength of his army works. A strong, mystical impact echoes throughout the place, and an immense curtain of dark purple mist quickly begins to rise around the young hero. Layla and Karen take large steps backward, in a total state of shock, upon feeling a tremendous spiritual pressure emanate violently from the ground. While the smoke of souls expands, Pluto ironically repeats that his servant limit is just a little higher than other summoners. Hundreds of skeletal warriors and elite archers, armed to the teeth, begin to march in an impeccable and intimidating formation in the snow. Pluto points his glowing scythe and directly orders his skeletal minions to search every corner, leaving no spot behind. Karen is completely shocked as he looks ahead and notices hundreds of terrifying creatures approaching their location. Pluto reveals that he only summoned 100 soldiers, but says he needs to multiply that number by 5 to explore the area quickly. The massive shadow army begins to march quickly in an organized line toward the fortress's imposing gates. The skeletal warriors move forward firmly, holding their sharp swords and metal shields, ready to face any danger. Pluto senses the presence of opponents in the area and warns with a focused look that the battle against the dungeon creatures has begun. An enemy soldier of level 10 appears, and Pluto calculates that his level 17 troops should be able to defeat the target with a single hit. The skeleton charges at the opponent, but the armored soldier manages to block the strike with his shield, creating a loud metallic clash. Another skeletal servant strikes the enemy's heavy armor with its blade, but the attack only causes a few sparks to fly into the air. Pluto gets confused as to why his troops can't defeat the target right away, realizing that the enemy's dark ice armor is far too durable. He then orders his warriors to avoid attacking the areas protected by the dark armor and focus only on the opponent's exposed spots. Pluto's soldiers quickly change tactics and land a precise strike, taking advantage of the openings in the ice creature's defense. One of the skeletal spears directly hits a gap in the dark armor, causing the enemy to be taken down in combat. The Dark Ice Warrior is finally defeated, and Pluto receives a floating notification indicating he gained 20 experience points. Karen sees the points rising and is impressed to notice he gained 15 experience points from defeating just a single enemy. Pluto realizes the dungeon awards 50 points per creature and that he receives the majority of that amount for being the battle leader. Karen excitedly does the math, but Layla dismisses the total, saying that 15 experience points doesn't really seem that impressive. The boy fires back, saying she doesn't understand how tough it is to play in a group, since experience is usually split and they barely get to level up. Pluto listens to the explanation and understands that he always leveled up much faster because he used to take on dungeons completely alone. Karen asks why Pluto chose a large and time-consuming dungeon instead of focusing on common ones that would be easier for leveling up. Pluto looks at the horizon and responds mysteriously that gaining experience is only one of the reasons he is challenging this place. Half an hour later, the skeletal army continues fighting intensely, defeating every single armored opponent that steps into their path. The precise strikes from Pluto's minions bring down another soldier onto the stone ground, securing even more experience points for the group. Defeat notifications begin to stack up on the screen, while the troops advance relentlessly through the dark hallway, clearing everything. Karen and Layla are shocked to see that Pluto's army managed to defeat 300 enemies in just 30 minutes of intense exploration. Pluto receives the reward for the defeats, and a system screen announces that his maximum mana has been permanently increased thanks to this major achievement. The Necromancer warns that he needs to move deeper into the fortress and tells his two companions they can wait there if they are afraid of the danger. Layla hesitates quite a bit, while Karen simply agrees and makes a quick decision on what he should do to tag along with the leader on this journey. Karen enthusiastically grabs Pluto's hand and insists on coming along because he wants to see the shadow army fighting up close in the dungeon. The boy says the monsters get stronger further in and assures them he can protect himself just fine, being an S-level warrior. Layla complains in annoyance upon seeing the two are about to go in alone, and Karen directly asks if she'd rather just wait there. Pluto says he doesn't mind whatever they decide and begins walking toward the gate, while Karen excitedly runs right behind his leader. Layla is left behind completely terrified, realizing she will be left all alone in a colossal, scaled dungeon filled with danger. She starts imagining terrible monsters popping out of nowhere to attack her, falling into despair and calling out for Pluto and Karen in the hallway. Panic takes over the young mage, who opens her eyes wide in fear as she notices the silence of that dark place becoming unbearable. Without second thoughts, she decides to put her pride aside and starts running hurriedly in the direction where the two guys just entered. Layla catches up with her companions and timidly says she decided to join them in exploring the castle so she wouldn't be left behind alone in the snow. Karen notices the situation and teases the mage, asking if she's scared, but she tries to hide her embarrassment by replying that of course she isn't. The trio walks together toward the fortress's imposing gates, while the freezing wind and snow blow quite heavily all around them. Pluto sternly warns that they must follow his orders strictly inside, and Karen excitedly agrees, saying he will do exactly that. The group moves through the snow-covered streets of the abandoned fortress while the skeletal army fights off enemies everywhere. Layla asks worryingly if they are lost, but Pluto reassures her that he shares his troops' vision and knows the entire terrain perfectly. An hour later, Karen excitedly comments that the scenery looks like a real war, but Layla remains anxious about the possibility of an ambush. Pluto responds coldly that no one who has actually survived a real war would ever use the word cool to describe such a scary situation. Meanwhile, in another part of the fortress, the Shadow Squad continues its relentless march. Climbing the massive gray stone staircases, the skeletons move forward silently through the darkness, but end up drawing the attention of something that was waiting in the shadows of that freezing place. A massive, dark, armored warrior appears at the top of the steps, blocking the troops' path with its intimidating and imposing presence in the air. The enemy giant activates its glowing red eyes, making its mystical energy overflow as it prepares to strike the troops.